Chapter 131. In the main hall, the Empress was sitting upright. After a while, Hongwu strode into the hall. "Greetings, Your Majesty. Give the General-in-Chief who supports the nation a seat of honor." Just as the Empress finished speaking, someone moved a chair over and placed it behind Hongwu. "When will the General-in-Chief who supports the nation set off?" the Empress asked. Hongwu would return at this time every year and return to the north after the Empress's birthday celebration. It had almost become a routine over the past few years. "I am relieved to see that Your Majesty is safe and sound. I will set off tomorrow," Hongwu said. "It has been hard on you, General. You have been guarding the borders for many years. It's a pity that there is no one to replace you." "Thank you for your concern, Your Majesty. I am used to it. Furthermore, there are good places at the borders where we can see snow occasionally in winter." Hongwu laughed heartily. "That scenery is very beautiful. I want to see it too." After finishing this sentence, the Empress added, "When the General-in-Chief attacks Great Xia, I will also go there to see the snow." Hongwu laughed heartily again upon hearing this. If Great Xia was ready, he would wait until he repelled the Great Xia army before attacking and occupying the city so that the Empress could enjoy the snow there. "I will pass down the recruitment order after the General-in-Chief leaves. I will also find a way to prepare the weapons." "You can rest assured," the Empress said again. "In that case I can rest assured." Hongwu was very clear about the situation in Dayo. He knew that it was very difficult, but he still hoped that the Empress could get enough weapons. Even if it was only 10,000, it would still increase his chances of success. "Does the General-in-Chief know where Lu Qi is?" "Lu Pinghai? As far as I know, his whereabouts are uncertain. However, in November every year, he goes to a fishing village in the East Sea for a few days to pay his respects to a good friend," Hongwu replied. "Get someone to wait for him and tell him that I want Spirit Yuan pills. He can ask for whatever he wants," the Empress said. Hongwu was slightly startled. The primary spirit pill was the best medicine in the world for strengthening one's foundation. It was specially used to strengthen one's foundation for those who were naturally weak. It was used to strengthen one's foundation so that they could cultivate. Moreover, it could gradually change one's physique within 2 years. This would make one's cultivation speed even faster. Based on this point alone, this medicine was one of the rare treasures in the world. Could it be that His Majesty wanted this thing for that brat? As far as I know, I'm afraid he doesn't have more than 2 of them on hand. 2 years ago I wanted to exchange one with him, but he refused. In the end, the 2 of them had a big fight and both of them were injured." "I'm afraid it won't be easy," Hongwu said with a bitter smile. "I didn't expect His Majesty to request this for that brat. Tell him that if he doesn't give it to me, I will beat him to death, and it will naturally belong to me," the Empress said coldly. Hongwu was still smiling bitterly. In any case, Lu Haiping was ranked 8th in the world and was only slightly weaker than Her Majesty. How could he be killed so easily? Even if His Majesty could defeat him, it would not be easy for His Majesty to keep him here. At this point, no one could stop him if he wanted to escape. Furthermore, Lu Pinghai's hometown was in the Yun Nation. Could it be that His Majesty wanted to personally visit the Yun Nation? After a while, Hongwu returned to the mansion with a slight frown. "Grandpa, the way you're frowning makes you look old." Hong Xian jumped in front of Hongwu and smoothed his frown with her palm. "Hong Xian, what kind of person is Ren Baqian?" Hongwu inquired. At the mention of Ren Baqian, Hong Xian's face immediately turned black. After returning that day, she didn't receive any punishment, but Yaozi was whipped 10 times. Then she was scolded by her father and was still locked up at home. That scoundrel was actually chosen by Her Majesty as her husband? What exactly did Her Majesty see in him? Hong Xian couldn't figure it out. She didn't like Ren Baqian at all. However, when asked about this matter by her godlike grandpa, she didn't dare to add fuel to the fire. She only recounted everything that happened that day. "I see." Hongwu nodded his head thoughtfully. From his granddaughter's words and what he saw that day, Ren Baqian was a vile person. It wasn't a good thing to keep such a person by Her Majesty's side. However, it was better to let someone keep an eye on Ren Baqian and continue to observe him. After all, the most important thing now was to prepare for Great Xia's actions. If Ren Baqian discovered that Ren Baqian was really as he thought, he couldn't be allowed to live. Ren Baqian naturally didn't know what the Empress was preparing for. He also didn't know that he was being targeted by the second most powerful person in Dayo. After staying in Qingxin Palace Hall for 3 days, Ren Baqian returned to Earth. He tried to use Rui visualization for the past 2 nights, but he couldn't enter that kind of empty state. Once he calmed down, all kinds of thoughts would fly around in his mind like wild horses galloping on the prairie. Even if he tried his best to control his mind, all kinds of thoughts would emerge in his mind after 10 to 20 seconds. Therefore, the first thing he did after waking up was to turn on his computer and search for famous Taoist temples to see if they had any solutions. The first thing he went to was the Laojun temple near the city. The temple was very prosperous. Rinpoche first gave 5,000 yuan of incense money and requested to see the temple master to consult about something. After a while, Rinpoche came out of the Laojun temple. Taoism indeed had a way to calm the mind. The main point was to keep one's mind and pursue not a single thought. In between, all thoughts had to be extinguished. However, in this case, it seemed like he couldn't practice Rui visualization. How could he practice it without any thoughts? When he came out of that state, distracting thoughts arose again. Unless he practiced for a long period of time, the distracting thoughts would be reduced after a long period of time. However, whether he could achieve his goal or not, it would take too long. Even so, Rinpoche still brought this meditation method with him. If the Buddhist method didn't work, he could only try this method first. The next stop was the Grief Temple in another city. It was also quite famous on the internet. The monks here persisted in their ascetic practice. In this day and age, it was very rare. In any case, most people would think of fat heads and big ears when they mention monks. Rinpoche arrived at the foot of the Grief Temple in the afternoon. When he went up the mountain, he saw the abbot. He was a skinny monk with drooping eyebrows and was in his 50s. "Master, because I want to do something, I need to clear my mind in a short period of time. How can I do it?" Rinpoche asked directly. The monk drew a circle on the ground and said, "If you smear the inside of the circle with ink, can it be erased after a day?" "I'm afraid it can't be erased." Rinpoche shook his head. After a day the ink would have seeped in. He understood what the monk meant. The monk was saying that the distracting thoughts had already taken root in his mind. Just like the ink, it couldn't be erased. That's right. It can't be erased unless the soil is dug away. However, if you want to clear your mind in a short period of time, there's only one way, the monk said. "How do I do it?" Rinpoche's spirit was lifted. It was good that there was a way. Smack it with a brick and lose your memory. You will forget everything and your mind will be blank. You can do whatever you want and it will naturally become clear, the monk said. Rinpoche really wanted to curse. "Damn you. I'm afraid this benefactor is also unwilling. If you forget, you won't be you." The monk laughed again. Chapter 132. Early in the morning, the foot of Bayan Mountain was like a bustling market. It was hard to imagine that there would be so many people gathered at the foot of the mountain in the middle of winter, and there was even a morning market. Youtiao, wonton, egg pancakes, pies, and all kinds of stalls were lined up on both sides of the road. Almost every stall was occupied. Rinpoche saw many stalls selling Buddhist beads, guanyin and Buddha pendants and Buddhist scriptures. Everything here seemed to be related to Buddhism. Rinpoche held a meat bun in his mouth and soy milk in one hand. His eyes were bloodshot. He felt that he had risked his life to rush here in one night. He wasn't in a hurry to go up the mountain. He walked around the morning market at the foot of the mountain and stopped to take a look at the stalls that he was interested in. The palace of Deyo was good, but it was too cold and cheerless. After staying there for a few days, he started to miss the lively place again. Humans were like this. They were complicated and always wanted things that weren't in front of them. After staying at the foot of the mountain for a while, Rinpoche followed the pilgrims up the mountain path. He rested for a long time at the entrance of the mountain before entering. After entering, he saw an L-shaped pool with an arch bridge over it. Beyond the pool there was a huge building. "Hello, I would like to meet Master Su Wen. Master Yuanji of the Sorrowful Temple asked me to come," Rinpoche said to a young monk not long after he entered the temple. "Please wait here for a while, I will inform the abbot," the young monk said. After a while, Rinpoche was invited to a guest hall at the back of the mountain. After sitting there for a while, he saw a young monk walking in from outside. He was in his early 30s and had a pair of extremely bright eyes that gave people the feeling that they were as clear as a lake. Just by looking at this pair of eyes, one could directly ignore his appearance. It was said that the eyes were the window to the soul. Was this person's mind pure and clear? Rinpoche subconsciously thought of this and quickly stood up. "Greetings, master." When he lowered his head, he realized that this monk was barefoot. It was winter now and walking barefoot was really impressive. Rinpoche immediately felt deep veneration for him. "Greetings, benefactor." "Benefactor, you came from Senior Yuanji's place. May I know why you are looking for me?" Su Wen sat on a chair with a gentle smile on his face. His voice was very clean. Yes, from beginning to end, the monk gave him a feeling of cleanliness, be it his gaze or his voice. Even though his feet were covered in dust, it still gave Rinpoche this feeling. Master, because I have to do something, I actually have to visualize a picture in a state of emptiness. I have to maintain a clear mind and do it in a state without any distracting thoughts. How can I do it? It has to be done within a month, Rinpoche said respectfully. He didn't want to go into so much detail, but he couldn't do anything about it since he didn't get it from the first two places. This person looked extraordinary, so he told him the truth. Suwon pondered for a moment and said, look at that picture every day from morning to night, even when you're eating and thinking about it when you're sleeping. Don't let that picture leave your sight for even a moment. Until that picture occupies your entire mind, leaving no space for even a moment, you will be able to do it. So simple? Rinpoche asked in surprise. Just look simple. Suwon laughed. Rinpoche thought about it carefully. This method was indeed easier said than done. Whether it was day or night, he had to look at the same picture without the slightest bit of distraction. From morning to night, he had no idea how long it had been. He had to make sure that there was nothing else in the center of his eyes except for the picture. It was indeed easier said than done. Although it was difficult, it was a way to eliminate distracting thoughts. Moreover, it was more time-saving than the mind-calming method. Thank you, Master. Is there any other way? Rinpoche still asked. There are gains and losses. If you don't want to pay, how can you gain? Suwon laughed. Rinpoche stood up and said, thank you, Master. No matter what, this was a good method. Don't be anxious, please wait a moment. Suwon smiled at Rinpoche, stood up and left the room. Rinpoche didn't know what he meant, so he waited in the room. After a while, Suwon returned with a thin booklet in his hand. He passed it to Rinpoche and said, you can read this booklet every day. It has the effect of calming your mind and nourishing your qi. Thank you, Master. Rinpoche cupped his hands. He was used to this kind of greeting and it was completely subconscious. It's all right. I just want to say something. Benefactor, you can remember it. In this world there are gains and losses. If you want sincerity, you can't exchange it with sincerity. Using words is just a small trick and won't last long. Rinpoche stiffened after hearing this. He felt his heart beating faster. After a while he said, thank you, Master, for reminding me. I just don't know why you said that. I suddenly thought of an old friend and expressed my feelings. Benefactor, please don't take it to heart. Suwon smiled and said, Benefactor, please go ahead. Rinpoche walked out of the temple and still felt a chill down his spine. What did this monk know? How could he say such words without thinking? After thinking for a long time, Rinpoche still couldn't figure it out. It was impossible for anyone to know about his matters in the other world. After thinking for a long time, he only had one thought. Could it be that this monk was like a fortune teller and saw that he had a romantic debt written on his face? After thinking about it, this was somewhat possible. After all, those traditional things had been passed down for so many years that it was hard to distinguish between real and fake. If there really was such a capable person, it could be considered acceptable. Thinking of this, Rinpoche heaved a sigh of relief. After this incident, that monk had always been somewhat mysterious in his heart. Therefore he paid more attention to the method that the monk mentioned. Such a person shouldn't be fooling him, right? After going down the mountain, Rinpoche looked at the booklet in his hand. On the cover was the Heart Sutra of Prajnaparamita. After flipping it open, he realized that there were only 3 pages. 1 page of scripture and 2 pages of explanations. No wonder it was so thin. It was already midnight when he returned home. He lay on his bed and fell asleep immediately. After another day, Rinpoche brought candy and wine back to the other world. This time the wine was Zweiking. In any case, he bought it from the supermarket and wasn't sure if it was real or fake. Ever since he was young, the Wuxia novels often mentioned Zweiking or Zweiking. There was always an indescribable feeling in his heart. Therefore, after seeing it, he bought it for the Empress to have a taste. In fact, the Empress didn't attend court every day. She would attend court once every 3 days. After all, there weren't that many matters to handle. Some matters were handled by the elders and the 6 departments. Only the important matters would be discussed in court. Rinpoche saw the Empress in the garden previously. She was dressed in red and her hair was flowing down her back. She was fiddling with the music box in her hand. After seeing Rinpoche, she handed it over to the maid. It's good that you are here. Tell me a story. You haven't finished the previous time, the Empress said casually. Upon hearing this, Rinpoche decided to put other things aside and continue with investiture of the gods. After all, it had been quite a long time. It had been a month since both stories started. It took him some time to remember where he had stopped. As the story progressed, Neza, Lei Jinzi, Yang Jian, and the 10,000 immortals from the Jie school appeared one after another. The story became more and more exciting. Ren Baqin only stopped the story when he accompanied the Empress for lunch. He didn't know if it was because of the lighting, but the Empress gave Ren Baqin a particularly charming feeling today. He couldn't help but take a few more glances at her. "You are much more daring today," the Empress said as she looked at his face. Ren Baqin had indeed become more daring recently. In the past he always felt that the Empress was temperamental. In addition, she could take his life just by extending her hand. As such, he had always been cautious. However, when he realized that the Empress was just an ordinary person in certain aspects and was even a little girl, the fear in his heart lessened slightly. At least he wasn't as cautious as before. Chapter 133. At noon in the garden, the sun shone on the man in front of her. It was as if he was covered with a layer of radiance. He said, "If beauty in the world has a color, it must be the red color now." At this moment, Qi Zixiao felt an indescribable panic in her heart. Her heart was beating rapidly. Following which, a murderous intent arose in her heart, but she suppressed it in an instant. "What happened to me just now? Why did I have such a feeling?" Qi Zixiao closed her eyes. She didn't know what happened to her just now. It was a feeling that she had never felt before that made her a little panicky and a little lost. It made her think that if she killed this person she wouldn't be as flustered as she was just now. However, this thought was immediately suppressed by her. Killing him was not her original intention. It was just a subconscious reaction in that instant. At the same time that that thought was suppressed, the palpitation in her heart was also suppressed. When she opened her eyes again, her heart had already calmed down. It was just that there was a strange feeling in her heart that she couldn't explain clearly. Something was changing and quietly germinating. "How's your practice of Rui visualization going?" the Empress asked. In fact, she knew that Ren Baqin definitely didn't make any progress. However, she suddenly didn't know what to say. "I was about to report to your Majesty that I have a method that I'm not sure if it will work. During the period of practicing Rui visualization, I have to devote all my attention to it and it will be hard for me to react to the outside world. I'm afraid I won't be able to visit your Majesty during this period of time," Ren Baqin said. This was the reason why he came. If he used the method that the monk mentioned to practice Rui visualization, he was afraid that during this period of time he would have to devote all his attention to it and it would be hard for him to react to the outside world. As long as he was slightly distracted, he was afraid that all his previous efforts would be wasted. Naturally, he couldn't care less about the Empress. It was better to inform the Empress about any problems that might arise. "All right, I will get someone to send you 3 meals a day." The Empress was slightly surprised that Ren Baqin actually found a method so quickly. Although she didn't know if it would work, he had tried his best. "Thank you for your concern, your Majesty." Ren Baqin sat at the side of a small round table. He could even smell the fragrance of the Empress. It was similar to the fragrance of flowers and it smelled very good. No one spoke. Both of them were immersed in their own thoughts. Seeing that the Empress didn't have anything else to say after the meal, he bade her farewell and went back to cultivate. The Empress stared blankly at Ren Baqin's back as he disappeared around the corner. She then withdrew her gaze and said to the 2 people behind her, "Let's go back to the palace." Back in the palace, the Empress sat on the couch with a wine cup in her hand. She was slightly distracted. She still couldn't figure out why she had such a feeling just now. Logically speaking, with her strength, how could something like panic suddenly appear in her heart? After thinking for a long time, she still couldn't come to a conclusion. The Empress thought about the Rui visualization that Ren Baqin was practicing. At that time, she had also flipped through that martial arts manual and felt that it was a little strange. However, she always felt that there was something special about it. As a result, she didn't stop Ren Baqin. However, it wouldn't be easy for him to master it, and the Empress wasn't optimistic about his success. It seemed that he still had to prepare the spirit primary pill. First he had to find Lu Qi Lu Pinghai. "Get Gu Daxiong here," the Empress ordered. About an hour later, Gu Daxiong hurried into the hall. "Your Majesty, has the 7th Prince of Great Xia left?" the Empress asked coldly. "Your Majesty, he has already left with his men yesterday," Gu Daxiong promptly replied. "Oh." The Empress nodded her head slightly. When she thought of the 7th Prince of Great Xia, she suddenly felt like killing him. When she thought of someone with such a face, she felt a little awkward. She didn't expect him to leave just after she sent someone to deliver the Kirin blood to him yesterday. However, it was good that he left. It would be troublesome if he died in Lan City. In any case, on the surface, he was here to deliver a gift to her. What about the others? The Empress casually asked again. Most of them have left, and there are very few who stayed behind. In addition, Ning Kaichen would like to see your majesty, Gu Daxiong said. Let him see me tomorrow. You can leave now, the Empress waved her hand and said. After Gu Daxiong left, the Empress was in a daze for quite a while. Then she shouted, Summon Hong Bao. Hong Bao was a burly man who was 2 meters tall. He had a big beard and strands of stubble on his hair. Your subject, Hong Bao, greets your majesty. Hong Bao's voice was extremely loud and clear, comparable to that of Shi Wanshan and his son. Pick some men and follow the 7th prince of Great Xia's troops. When he returns to Great Xia, kill him. I want to see his head. Also, don't leave anyone who sees you alive. Your subject obeys your majesty, Hong Bao said loudly. Although he didn't know how that person offended the Empress, since the Empress had spoken, even if he was the Emperor of Great Xia, he would still behead the Empress. Go and get ready. We will set off immediately. Remember, I want to see his head. The Empress waved her hand. After Hong Bao left, the Empress felt a little better. She believed that her mood would be even better after seeing that person's head. As for whether there would be any repercussions if the 7th prince of Great Xia died, she didn't care. In any case, Great Xia was already making preparations. The Empress stood up and walked to the mirror. She looked at herself in the mirror, gently stroked her face with her fingers, and then retracted her hand. The 7th prince absolutely didn't expect that Qi Zixia would actually want to kill him for such an inexplicable reason. At this moment he was sitting in the carriage, fiddling with a small bottle in his hand. In any case, he had finally achieved his objective this time. With this bottle of blood, he could save at least 10 years of hard work and he would be able to compete with his 3rd brother. However, he didn't expect that Qi Zixia would actually want that kid who looked exactly like her to be her husband. It was really unexpected. This world was really interesting. There was actually someone who looked exactly like her. If they wore the same clothes and didn't open their mouths, even her father and her brothers wouldn't be able to tell them apart. Xiao Wu, if I were to stand next to that kid and wear the same clothes, would you be able to tell who is who? The 7th prince suddenly asked curiously. Your Highness, it doesn't mean that you are a tiger just because you are wearing a tiger's skin. Xiao Wu smiled gently, and her eyes were filled with tenderness. The 7th prince laughed heartily and hugged Xiao Wu in his arms. Originally, he wanted to find an opportunity to kill that Rinpochen. Now, it seemed that it wouldn't be possible in a short period of time. He could only look for another opportunity in the future. After returning, he would arrange for a few kamikaze warriors to hide in Lan City. That person would come out of the palace sooner or later. In this world, it was enough that there was only one of him. As long as that person wasn't dead, he wouldn't feel so carefree. Chapter 134. What is storyteller Rin doing? The Empress asked faintly in the palace. The music box in her hand was emitting clear and melodious music. He hasn't left the house for a few days. Every day he sits in front of the table and reads martial arts. He doesn't move at all. Occasionally he would yell and pull his hair, Hong Wan replied softly. Oh. The Empress nodded her head and stuffed a piece of candy into her mouth. She felt bored these few days and wanted to listen to a story. Unfortunately, Rinpochen was practicing. Hong Wan winked at Qing Wan. This was the 5th time that Her Majesty had asked about Rinpochen every day. Did Her Majesty really like that person? Unfortunately, that person was too weak. At this moment, Rinpochen, who was considered too weak, was vexed and pulling his hair. He was distraught and was distracted again. The monk's method was more difficult than he had imagined. It had been 7 days. He had been in this world for 4 days and on Earth for 3 days. Every time he concentrated for a while, he would subconsciously have all sorts of thoughts. Not to mention when he was eating and sleeping. He didn't know when he would be able to achieve the state where there was nothing else in his heart. Perhaps he would never be able to achieve it. At this moment, Rinpochen was very depressed. He took the Heart Sutra. When Avalokitesvara Bodhisattva practiced Prajna Paramitha, he saw that the 5 skandhas were empty and transcended all sufferings. Sarira, form is not different from emptiness and emptiness is not different from form. Form is emptiness and emptiness is form. It is the same for feeling, thinking, action, and knowledge. Sarira is the emptiness of all dharmas. It is neither born nor destroyed, neither defiled nor pure, neither increasing nor decreasing. Therefore, emptiness is colorless and there is no feeling, thinking, action, and knowledge. There were a total of 260 words. Rinpochen read it over and over again. He didn't know how many times he had read it before he finally calmed down. Putting the Heart Sutra aside, Rinpoche stood in front of the window, took a deep breath and shouted. A loud shout startled many birds. The guard standing at the door shook his head slightly. The person inside was acting up again. It happened every day and they had gotten used to it after a few days. After Rinpoche finished shouting, he felt much better. He turned around and sat in front of the table, flipped open the Rui visualization, and continued to stare at the lake on the first page. He poured all his attention into it and didn't dare to relax. Rinpoche had made some progress over the past 2 days. Even though it wasn't much, it was easier for him to focus on Rui visualization. This gave him some hope. How storyteller Rin now. The Empress was a little bored in the garden. She stretched out her hand and a bird flapped its wings and flew into her hand. If one looked closely, they would find that the bird was flapping its wings with all its might to escape from that palm, but the distance between them was getting closer and closer. It's said that the number of times he shouts has decreased. Sometimes he doesn't even notice when I send food in. However, it is said that his condition is very poor and he has become much weaker. The Empress held the bird in front of her and stared into its small eyes. She saw that the bird's eyes were filled with panic. Feeling a little bored, she raised her hand and released the bird. Have you eaten? Every time the food would be placed in front of him. Sometimes he would eat it and sometimes there would be leftovers. However, I haven't eaten for the past 2 meals, Hongwan replied. The Empress nodded her head slightly. She was a little distracted and no one knew what she was thinking about. Looking at the city wall in the distance, the 7th prince smiled. He was finally back. He had been on the road for the past half a month, and he was extremely tired. No matter how luxurious a carriage was, it couldn't be compared to a mansion. Even though this was a county near the border of Great Xia, at least there was hot water, wine and delicious food. It was much more comfortable than being in the wilderness. However, he felt a little uneasy these past 2 days. It was a little strange and he didn't know if something was going to happen. When the carriage arrived at the county magistrate and the registrar came out to welcome them. Welcome, Your Highness. Your names? The 7th prince asked with a smile. Your humble servant is the local county magistrate, Li Zixing. This is the registrar and this is the county lieutenant. I will remember them. This time we are just passing by. Prepare a place to rest. I will set off tomorrow morning. The 7th prince pulled open the curtain of the carriage and said to the people outside. Yes, Your Highness. The county has prepared everything. The Kaiping county magistrate and the registrar promptly responded. Well done. The 7th prince nodded his head and put down the curtain. The Kaiping county magistrate, the registrar, and the others heaved a sigh of relief. This person was really too high up and they couldn't even fawn over him. As long as there were no problems, they would be thankful. As for writing down his name, he would be a fool if he believed in such official words. In the distance, Hong Bao and his men were waiting in the mountains. They were all carrying jerky which they tore off and stuffed into their mouths. Then they drank a mouthful of wine. This was considered a luxury in the wilderness. At night, a burly man came back to report, Sir, they have entered Pinggu County. Good. On the way to the capital of Great Xia from Pinggu County, we will definitely pass by Broken Dragon platform. Let's go ahead and wait, Hong Bao said loudly. Everyone has rested enough. Let's set off. Hong Bao only brought 15 people with him. Including himself, there were only 16 of them. They shuttled through the forest as if they were flying. Taking advantage of the darkness of the night, they passed through the plains. The next morning they entered the forest again to hide from the people. That night, they arrived at Broken Dragon Platform, which was 300 miles away from Pinggu County. The so-called Broken Dragon Platform was a canyon. On one side of the canyon was a mountain shaped like a dragon's head, and on the other side was a mountain range that resembled the body of a dragon. It was said that in ancient times a real dragon fell from the sky, and a huge sword descended from the sky and slashed the dragon into 2. That was how the Broken Dragon Platform was formed. After everyone arrived at Broken Dragon Platform, other than a few people who were sent out to keep an eye on the 7th prince's carriage, the others rested in the forest. After another 2 days, someone came back in the morning to report, that carriage is here. After a while, the carriage appeared on the horizon. There were 50 cavalrymen in front and behind, and all of them were at the human level. This was what the 7th prince had spent a lot of effort to recruit and train. In the middle were 5 carriages. In the most luxurious carriage was 7th prince and Xiao Wu. Behind it was another carriage with 2 consecrators, both of whom were at the earth embryo level. The last 3 carriages were filled with the supplies needed for a long journey. Hong Bao had already inquired about these matters before he left the city. There were only 100 of them at the human level and 2 at the peak of the Earth embryo level. Hong Bao grinned. After following them for so long, he could finally make his move. "Sir, what should we do?" Someone came to his side and asked. "Kill them all. Leave no one alive. Remember, I want the head of the 7th prince. Don't smash it," Hong Bao instructed. "Understood." Everyone nodded their heads. When the 7th prince approached Broken Dragon platform, the carriage slowed down and stopped. 4 cavalrymen spurred their horses forward. Although it was impossible for anyone in Dayo to ambush this team, it was better to be careful. When the carriage moved forward again, Hong Bao waved his hand, and everyone removed the bows from their backs. Chapter 135. Wei Gu smiled when he saw the 4 riders return. After the Broken Dragon platform, it would be a flat plain. If they sped up, they would be able to return to the capital in half a month. At that time, they could relax and go back to see their son to see if he had made any progress in his cultivation. That boy was already 13 years old and should be sent to the martial arts academy next year. He looked back at the riders behind him and saw that they all had a relaxed look on their faces. In fact, after entering Great Xia, their nerves had already relaxed. After all, this month's journey was quite tiring. Previously, everyone in Dayo was more or less on guard, but after returning they immediately relaxed. It would be a joke if the 7th prince of Great Xia was attacked in Great Xia. 100 intermediate man-wheel knights, even if they really encountered ignorant bandits, would be able to crush them into pieces in an instant. Moreover, there were 2 earth wheel experts in the carriage who had reached the Earth Embryo realm and were only 1 step away from breaking through the Celestial Gate. With this kind of strength, they could be considered experts anywhere. In fact, there was no need for them at all. Under normal circumstances, an intermediate earth wheel expert like him would be able to solve all of them. Set off. Wei Gu stretched out his right hand and waved it forward. The convoy began to move forward. After advancing another 100 meters, when they were about to enter Wulong Gorge, several huge stones that were 1 square meter suddenly whizzed down from the sky. They came from the hillsides on both sides. Enemy attack. Wei Gu's expression suddenly changed as he shouted. "Elders, please make your move." The hillside on the side was at least 100 meters away from here. To be able to throw such large stones with such power, only experts at the earth wheel level or above could do it. How could several earth wheel experts attack the 7th prince's convoy at the same time? Didn't they know who they were facing? Following Wei Gu's voice, one of the carriages in the convoy suddenly exploded. 2 shadows appeared in the air and punched the first 2 huge stones, immediately turning them into countless fragments that flew everywhere. Ah! There were a few screams from the convoy. A total of 10 riders were shot and fell off their horses. A total of 5 huge stones smashed over. But whether it was Wei Gu or the 2 that hit the carriage, the other 3 could bring themselves back of the convoy. The remaining 90 riders all had nervous expressions. There were 16 burly men surrounded on the ground. The one in the lead was 2 meters tall and wore coarse clothes. More than 10 large axes that were the size of wheels surrounded the entire convoy. His head was covered in strands of cars in the convoy and 100 intermediate man-wheel knights. Other than the aboriginals, however, they were surrounded by more than 10 people. The remaining 15 people were of different heights. The shortest was 1.8 meters and the tallest was 2 meters. They were like small giants, and each of them held heavy weapons that even an earth wheel expert would find difficult to wield. The 16 of them were all aboriginals, and their bodies were filled with powerful blood chi. The burly man in the lead caused the 2 consecrators to feel an intense pressure. As for the other 15 people, with just a glance, Rinpoche knew that the weakest among them was equivalent to an earth wheel expert. There were 16 earth wheel experts, and one of them had even surpassed the pinnacle of the earth wheel level. When everyone realized this fact, their faces immediately changed. How dare you attack the 7th prince's carriage? Attacking the 7th prince within the borders of Great Xia? Are you trying to provoke a war between the 2 nations? Still not withdrawing? Wei Gu roared. Ha ha, you talk too much nonsense. Ba kill. Hong Bao laughed loudly. Following which, he spat disdainfully and shouted the word, kill. At the same time, he spun his right hand, and a huge axe the size of a wheel flew toward the cavalry in front of him with a whistling sound. Then one of the consecrators stretched out his hand and dragged the axe into the air. Before that, the axe had already brought along a streak of blood. 5 or 6 riders and their horses were chopped into 2 halves, and the scene was filled with wails. After Hong Bao threw the axe away, he grabbed the other axe with his right hand and leaped forward. The huge axe cleaved straight at Wei Gu. Wei Gu didn't dare to block it and immediately scuttled away from the back of his horse. Hong Bao cleaved the horse's buttocks with his axe. Following which, he leaped over everyone's heads and headed straight for the carriage in the middle. "Stay here." The consecrator who dragged the huge axe directly went forward with a long sword in his hand. He transformed into a white line and moved as fast as a meteor. Hong Bao just swung the axe horizontally in the air and blocked the sword. The other consecrator rushed into the 7th prince's carriage, grabbed him with one hand, broke the carriage and rushed out. Xiao Wu looked at the 7th prince being taken away by the consecrator with a face full of panic and disappointment. The 7th prince didn't even have the intention to pull her back. She felt completely disheartened at this moment. She didn't even feel the splinters of the broken carriage hitting her face. It turned out that she was just a puppet in the 7th prince's eyes. This can't be blocked, right? Otherwise, that consecrator wouldn't be able to escape with the 7th prince. Xiao Wu looked at the dozens of figures rampaging through the crowd and listened to the blood-curdling screams. She smiled bitterly. Anyone with discerning eyes could see that they couldn't be blocked. They couldn't be blocked at all. Even if there were twice as many of them, they still wouldn't be able to block it. These people won't let me live. Xiao Wu understood. An aboriginal expert intercepting the 7th prince within Great Xiao's borders was a big deal. If news of this got out, the entire Great Xiao would be shaken. "Forget it, I'll give myself a quick death." A short sword appeared in Xiao Wu's hand, and the tip of the sword was pointed at her chest. Once those people came over, she would give herself a quick death so that it wouldn't be too unsightly after her death. At the same time, she turned to look at the hillside at the side. Some trees had already begun to turn red, which was the color of fallen leaves. This season and this location were really suitable for her burial ground. She just wanted to take a look more. Wei Gu's current opponent wasn't Hong Bao. It was a burly man using the Aboriginal Army's standard thick saber. Although he was at a disadvantage, he could still hold on for a while. Occasionally he glanced to the side and saw that the entire team had been killed and scattered. Among them, the most eye-catching was the burly man who was 2 meters tall. Although his movements weren't considered fast, he was still faster than an ordinary man-wheel expert. He held a mace in his hand and blood rained down when he swung it. "It's over." Wei Gu had a miserable look on his face. He hoped that the 7th prince would be able to escape and take care of his family for the sake of his loyalty. Hong Bao laughed maniacally as he chopped down with his axe. The Earth Embryo expert didn't dare to block and could only retreat. Chapter 136. The consecrated Earth Embryo level expert had a grave expression on his face. The burly man in front of him gave him too much pressure. As long as his sword wasn't aimed at a vital point, the other party wouldn't dodge at all. Instead, he would just exchange injury for injury. "Damn it, where's my axe? Who's going to throw it over?" Hong Bao was a little annoyed that he couldn't take down the consecrated Earth Embryo level expert. "Sir, catch it." Immediately, someone left the battle and ran far away. Then he came back with an axe and threw it in Hong Bao's direction. The outcome had been determined. There were less than 30 knights left alive, and the number was decreasing rapidly. They couldn't escape even if they wanted to. Even if they tried to escape on horseback, there would be people shooting arrows at them. The remaining people didn't pose any pressure to the aboriginals. Hong Bao's opponent naturally didn't want him to catch it. He couldn't withstand one axe and the other party didn't seem to use much strength. If there were 2 axes, he wouldn't be able to withstand it. Has the 7th prince escaped? As long as he does, I can leave, the consecrated Earth Embryo level expert thought to himself. However, from his angle, he naturally couldn't see that the 7th prince had already been stopped. The consecrated Earth Embryo level expert looked at the 2 people in front of him, put the 7th prince aside and said in a low voice, "Your Highness, please leave first." The 7th prince clenched his teeth and left quickly without looking back. He couldn't understand why these people wanted to kill him. Besides Qi Zixiao, Hong Wu was the only one who could send so many experts. These people didn't look like they were from the military. That meant that Qi Zixiao wanted to kill him. What? He wasn't very talented and wasn't considered outstanding among his 11 brothers. Furthermore, he didn't do anything to offend Qi Zixiao. Why did she want to kill him? The 7th prince was about to break his teeth. Although he didn't know why, as long as he could return alive, he would definitely take revenge for what happened today. Just as the seventh prince was about to disappear into the forest, he suddenly heard an ear-piercing sound behind him. He jumped to one side and let out a blood-curdling scream. His thigh was pierced by a javelin, and even his bones were broken. The person walking over was a burly man with 5 beast claw scars on his face. If the claw marks were any deeper, his eyeballs would probably be gone. At this moment, his face was filled with murderous intent. He looked into the distance. The consecrated Earth embryo-level expert was entangled by 2 people and couldn't escape. As long as he had the intention to leave, the 2 people would definitely use of exchanging injuries for injuries. This sent a chill down his spine. The Aboriginals viewed dying in battle as an honor. Even after death, their corpses would be buried in the 60,000 mountains, and their souls would be with their ancestors. Therefore these Aboriginals seemed to never know what pain was, nor did they fear death. This was also what the other countries feared the most about Dayo. The seventh prince looked at the burly man who was walking step by step towards him, and his whole body trembled. The fear of death loomed over him. He had never thought that he would die here in such a situation. If he had known earlier, he would never have gone to Dayo. If it weren't for the fact that he valued the dragon scales, dragon blood, and Kirin blood so much, he wouldn't have come here in person. He didn't expect that he would invite a fatal disaster. Why does Qi Zixiao want to kill me? What? The seventh prince's face twitched as he howled in anger and despair. However, the burly man did not have the slightest intention to answer him. He directly nailed the seventh prince to the ground with a javelin and then chopped off his head with a knife. When the javelin pierced the ground, a face suddenly flashed in the seventh prince's mind. Was it because of him? But why exactly? In the vicinity of the carriage, the battle had already come to an end. Among the 100 intermediate man-wheel experts, not even a single horse was spared. Only corpses were left on the ground. Wei Gu's eyes were wide open as he looked at the sky. His body was a few meters away. It was already too late for the consecrated Earth embryo expert to escape. Other than Hong Bao, who was opposite him, there were 5 or 6 burly men outside the battlefield who were laughing heartily with their arms crossed. "Sir, you are the slowest." Hong Bao's eyes were bloodshot as he cursed, "Damn, this bastard is too slippery." The 2 axes in his hands were the size of wheels, and he was brandishing them like a windmill. The ground around him was almost 3 feet deep, and gullies covered a radius of 100 meters. Although his opponent was already covered in injuries, he still couldn't take them down. The consecrated Earth embryo expert laughed bitterly. He knew that he wouldn't be able to survive today. However, his dignity as an Earth embryo expert made him unwilling to die like this. Even if he died, he wanted to drag his opponent down with him. Very quickly he found a gap and pounced into the shadows of the axes. The sword in his hand suddenly disappeared, and when it reappeared, it was already in front of Hong Bao's throat. Pitif! The axe in Hong Bao's right hand suddenly sped up and chopped the consecrated Earth embryo expert's chest. Hong Bao's other axe flew out, and his left hand blocked the throat of the consecrated Earth embryo expert. The defense of the Aboriginals was very strong. Before the consecrated Earth embryo expert died, his sword pierced through Hong Bao's palm and was caught. It only caused a small wound on his throat. Damn, he's quite difficult to deal with. Even in death he still wants to bite me. Hong Bao threw the axe to one side, pulled out the sword from his left hand with his right hand, and casually threw the head of the consecrated Earth embryo expert to the ground. "Everyone go and see if there are any survivors. I will go and take a look." "Don't let that bastard escape," Hong Bao shouted, carried the axe and headed toward the other battlefield. However, by the time he arrived it was already over. He was surrounded by 7 or 8 Earth wheel experts. The consecrated Earth wheel expert didn't manage to escape either. Before he died he killed 1 and injured 3 others. Hong Bao went over to look at the burly man whose neck had been slit. He felt that it was a pity. Other than having a foul mouth, this bastard wasn't bad. "Carry him back. We can't let him wander around outside. Go back first, find a place to deal with his body and send him back to the mountains," Hong Bao instructed. "Yes." The others didn't say much. They directly carried him on their backs and didn't care that his body was bleeding all over. This was the blood of a brother and there was nothing to dislike. Hong Bao crushed the head of the consecrated Earth wheel expert with his foot. The burly man with 5 claw marks on his face handed over the head of the 7th prince. "Sir." Hong Bao took the head and looked at it. "Mission accomplished. Go back and pack up. Prepare to retreat." Just as they returned, someone shouted, "Sir, there's a group of people." They seem to be a caravan returning from our place. Did they see us? I saw them. They're retreating. Kill them all, Hong Bao said coldly. Hong Bao replied coldly. He raised his head and looked into the distance. Indeed, there was a group of people running away hurriedly. 8 of them chased after the caravan, while the rest of them destroyed some of the distinctive wounds on the corpses. For example, the wounds caused by the mace. Not many people in Great Xia use this kind of heavy weapon, and many aboriginals like to use it. When Hong Bao passed by the 7th prince's carriage, he took a look inside and saw an exceptionally beautiful lady leaning against the carriage. A dagger was stabbed into her chest and she was no longer breathing. After a long time, Ren Baqin woke up with a start and realized that he was in a room in Pingxin Park. Following which, he felt dizzy and his vision turned black. He couldn't help but throw himself onto the bed. After an unknown period of time, Ren Baqin woke up from his sleep and felt a little better. Although he still had a headache, it was not as severe as before. Previously, he had plunged 15 meters into the lake before he could no longer hold on and woke up. According to the Rui visualization, the visualization of water could only be considered complete if one could reach the bottom of the lake. He didn't know how long it would take for him to reach that level, but the most important hurdle had already been overcome. He would be able to reach it sooner or later. At the thought of this, Ren Baqin felt somewhat excited. Looking at the color of the sky outside, it should be afternoon and there was still some time before sunset. Ren Baqin wanted to look for the Empress to report the good news. After all, in this world, other than the Empress, there was no one else he could share his joy with. However, before he stepped out of the door, he could smell the rancid odor on his body. He didn't know how long it had been since he last bathed and he hadn't even changed his clothes. These days he had been focusing on the Rui visualization, and didn't pay attention to other things. At the same time, he also noticed that there was a set of food on the table. He didn't know when it was sent over, but it looked like it hadn't been touched. Initially he didn't notice it, but when he saw the food he immediately felt that his stomach was about to bulge. He ate a few mouthfuls. Although it was cold, it could at least fill his stomach. However, when he picked up the bowl, he felt that there was something wrong with his movements. It seemed that his movements were somewhat uncoordinated, which made him feel a little awkward. Ren Baqin was a little suspicious. After doing a few more movements, he realized that his movements seemed to be a little faster. Originally, an action that took 2 seconds to complete now only required 1 second. His habit was to complete this action in 2 seconds. He always felt that it was very strange. Other than that, Ren Baqin did a few more movements, but he didn't notice any other changes. It seems that this is the effect of Rui visualization, Ren Baqin thought to himself. Although the effect was a little too fast, it was still a good thing. Soon after, Ren Baqin went to the side to take a bath. Not to mention shower gel, there wasn't even soap in this world. He used a type of tree ash. After applying a layer of it on his body, he washed it off with water. The effect was similar to that of soap. In the past, he had never taken a bath after returning to Earth. Therefore, he didn't have much demand for this aspect. At this moment, he felt that it would be better if he could make soap. However, this wasn't a problem for the time being. It was better to meet the Empress first. Before leaving the house, he shaved his beard and looked at himself in the bronze mirror. Other than his hair being slightly longer, there were no other problems. Only then did he leave the house. When he saw the Imperial Guard at the door, Ren Baqin casually asked, "How long have I been in seclusion?" 23 days, that Imperial Guard replied quickly. "Thank you very much. So it has been so long, but it's still acceptable." As Ren Baqin thought about it, he suddenly thought of a problem. It seemed that the last time he went back was in late November. Over 20 days had passed and he had been on Earth for more than 2 months. It should be around February now. These 2 months he didn't have any contact with his family at all. He was afraid that his family was worried. According to his calculations, he should be back tonight. At that time he had to quickly contact his mother. Otherwise she would go crazy. Furthermore, it seemed that it was almost New Year. He didn't know which date it was and whether he could spend it at home. Along the way, he arrived at the door of the Empress's palace and said to the Imperial Guard, "Ren Baqin seeks an audience with Her Majesty. Please inform her of my arrival." A moment later, Ren Baqin strode into the palace. The Empress was eating fruits and didn't even look at him. Hong Yuan and Qing Yuan were laughing secretly at the back. Previously, Her Majesty asked about him every day. Now that he was here, Her Majesty acted as if she didn't see him. "Greetings, Your Majesty." Ren Baqin greeted the Empress not far away. Only then did the Empress raise her head to look at him. She casually threw the fruit core onto a plate at the side, wiped her mouth with a handkerchief and asked, "Why are you out? Have you mastered Rui visualization?" While she was asking, her eyes were sizing up Rinpoche. She wanted to see how his cultivation was progressing. Very quickly, the Empress realized that Rinpoche's blood and qi seemed to have become slightly stronger. It wasn't big, but to an expert like her, it was still very easy to detect. Especially when Rinpoche was visualizing Rui visualization. Previously, he practically didn't eat much. According to the Imperial Guard, he was getting weaker day by day. However, at this moment she couldn't see it from his body. Naturally, the Imperial Guard couldn't lie to her. In that case, Rinpoche had really mastered Rui visualization. But even so, the effect was a little too fast. This was because humans could only rely on food and medicine to replenish their blood and qi. But if he didn't eat, food and medicine were also useless. How could his blood and qi recover? Even if Rinpoche had mastered Rui visualization, his body shouldn't be like it was now. Rinpoche cupped his hands and said, "Thanks to your Majesty's blessings, I was lucky enough to master it." While speaking, there was a look of joy on his face. There was a little warmth that made Rinpoche's heart beat a little faster. After all, the Empress in front of him was a peerless beauty. Coupled with her status and strength, she was a great temptation to anyone. And now it was right in front of him. However, when he thought about how the Empress could crush him to death with just one finger, Rinpoche felt that it would be better for him to behave himself. "Go ahead and eat. You don't have to stare at me." The Empress raised her head and looked at him. The look in her phoenix-like eyes made his heart beat a little faster. Coldness and gentleness interweaved together like a beautiful painting. "I like to watch your Majesty eat." Rinpoche forcefully suppressed his emotions and said, "In my world there is a saying that beauty is a feast for the eyes. When facing your Majesty, I feel that I am already full without eating." "Why do I feel that you can't eat when you see me?" The Empress said coldly. "How is that possible? It is my greatest fortune to be able to eat with your Majesty. I don't know how many people in the world are envious of me." Rinpoche immediately replied with a "you have misunderstood" look on his face. The Empress looked at him and ignored him. She continued to eat. Her movements were slightly slower, but it was almost undetectable. After dinner, the Empress said again, "Teach Goyu some other dishes. I am tired of eating the dishes from the imperial kitchen." Rinpoche nodded his head in response. He was prepared to go back and copy the 8 major cuisines and send them to caretaker Go. After dinner, Rinpoche accompanied the Empress for a while. Then he walked back under the moonlight. The palace was always very quiet. Occasionally he would come across patrolling guards. There weren't even many maids. During the day there was still some liveliness and vigor. Every time it was night time it would be quiet. After staying in such a place for a long time, it was no wonder that the Empress's temperament was so cold. After returning to his bed, Rinpoche's mind was filled with thoughts of quickly giving his family a call. He did not know how anxious they were. When he woke up, Rinpoche was slightly stunned by the familiar scenery around him. It was an antique room and he was still in Pingle Park. Why didn't I go back? Did I calculate the date wrongly? Rinpoche thought suspiciously. According to his calculations, today was the 24th day. It was indeed time for him to go back. This was because every time he traveled, he would stay in this world for 4 days. Previously, he had greeted the Empress on his first day back and began to practice. Therefore, there was no problem with the time calculation. In that case, the guards must have remembered wrongly, right? A group of fellows who had to stretch out all 5 of their fingers to make a 2 sign were indeed unreliable. The aboriginals knew how to count, and a sow could climb a tree. The Empress looked around curiously. Everything was full of a fresh feeling. She had never seen or heard of anything before. What is this? The Empress took a few steps forward and stretched out her hand to touch the glass door of the balcony. Your Majesty, this is glass. You can see outside through the glass. It doesn't affect your vision, but it can block out dust and separate the temperature from the outside. I want this. The Empress immediately decided. Your Majesty, I will go back and finish the iron mine. I will make glass for you, Rinpoche hurriedly said. What is outside? The Empress looked outside the glass door and asked. Your Majesty, that is snow. Rinpoche looked outside the door. The Empress definitely didn't ask about the balcony. There was a thick layer of snow on the balcony and snowflakes were still falling from the sky. I want to go out and take a look. Open this. Upon hearing this, Rinpoche hurriedly opened the door and a gust of extremely cold air directly blew in. At this moment, Great Xia was extremely hot. Rinpoche wore the official uniform of the storyteller of Qingxin Palace Hall every day. When the cold air blew on his body, he felt slightly chilly, but it wasn't too cold. The Empress seemed to be completely unaware of the cold outside. As soon as she stepped onto the balcony, she stepped into the snow and scooped up a handful of snow with both hands. Chapter 140. The Empress was dressed in red as she stood in the snow. Her fine black hair was blown by the wind. The moment she touched the snowflakes with her fingers, Rinpoche felt his heart beating faster. If possible, he really wanted to take a picture of this scene with his phone. It was so beautiful that it made people lose their wits. "Your Majesty, it's a little cold outside," Rinpoche said softly. At the same time, he noticed that the Empress wasn't wearing shoes. At that time, she suddenly appeared in front of him on the bed and was brought back by him. The Empress turned her head and glanced at him. Her fine black hair was blown by the wind and a few strands were blocking her delicate and moving face. Rinpoche felt that there was a cold look in the Empress's eyes. In the next second, the Empress grabbed Rinpoche's throat and threw him against the wall. "You lied to me," the Empress said coldly. "I trust you, but you have been lying to me all along." The Empress stretched out her right hand and seemed to be waiting for Rinpoche's explanation. If he couldn't explain clearly, her whole body was emitting an imposing aura, and it looked like she was going to flip out. Cough, cough. Rinpoche felt a tightness in his chest and cold sweat broke out on his forehead. He could feel that the imposing aura from the Empress was like a mountain range, making him unable to move at all. Bang! The window and glass door of the balcony at the side exploded and fell to the ground with a crash. "Your Majesty, I also don't know how this happened. Previously I couldn't control it at all. Otherwise, why would I disappear once every 3 days? Isn't this obviously telling others that there's something wrong with me? Why would I do such a thing? I just don't know if it's due to the influence of Rui visualization, or some other reason. Just now, I was thinking why I didn't come back on the day and suddenly came back," Rinpoche hurriedly explained. If the Empress in front of him flipped out, he would really be in trouble. Even if the Empress wouldn't kill him because he had to return to Dayo, she wouldn't let him have an easy time. The Empress lifted him up by his neck and pressed him against the wall. "I want to know how much of what you said to me was true?" Rinpoche's throat was tightly gripped by the Empress, and sweat kept flowing down his forehead. "If I could choose, I would always be under the same sky as your Majesty. A world without your Majesty is meaningless to me. A future without your Majesty is also not the future I want. Why would I deceive your Majesty? It's just that I don't know what unforeseen event happened that caused me to suddenly become like this." "I have no intention of deceiving you," Rinpoche said with difficulty. The Empress stared into his eyes, seemingly trying to determine whether he was lying or not. After a while, he slid to the ground, covered his throat, and coughed violently. He could even feel her breathing. "Why is there someone inside?" The Empress stretched out 2 fingers and took the phone away from Rinpoche's hand. She inadvertently turned around and took a few steps forward. "What's this thing?" "Your Majesty, this is a mobile phone. It's used for long-distance communication. Previously, I told your Majesty that there's a huge network here that covers the entire world. It allows people to instantly know what's happening on the other side of the world. A mobile phone is such a product. No matter where or when, it can be used for long-distance communication. Can it be used in Dayo?" The Empress was obviously very interested in this thing. It could directly know news from afar and speak to people who were very far away. No matter what happened anywhere, the imperial court could immediately know about it. The value of this thing was very high. "Your Majesty, if you want to use the wireless network, you must have a considerable technological foundation. This is because a mobile phone needs a base station to transmit information to a faraway place. I'm afraid that Dayo can't build a base station and a mobile phone in a short period of time. If there are copper and iron mines in Dayo, perhaps I can make a wired phone in my lifetime. However, that will take a long time. Currently, the level of technology in Dayo is really too low," Rinpoche said. "I don't quite understand. Are you saying that it can't be used in Dayo?" the Empress asked. There wasn't any displeasure on her face. It was more like she was trying to find out more. "It's just like transmitting a beacon. There must always be a person standing at one place. After seeing the beacon from afar, he ignites the beacon to transmit the information to the next place. This is the function of a base station. However, the information transmitted is even more complicated. From the steam engine to electricity to the network, it took hundreds of years of development to reach the current stage. Even though I know the technology involved, Deo lacks the foundation of this technology. It's just like an infant in swaddling clothes. If you give him a knife, he won't know how to use it. Only when he grows up can he learn how to use it. Chapter 142. Rinpoche spent a lot of effort to let the Empress roughly understand the meaning of technology. However, it was impossible for her to fully understand it. No matter how smart the Empress was, she couldn't understand a huge conceptual system that she had never heard of before and even challenged her understanding of the world in a short period of time. Even though she was an Earthling, she only had a rough idea of many things and some of her knowledge was completely wrong. However, Rinpoche spent a lot of effort to let the Empress understand that this world was different from the one Deo was in. Your Majesty, I will send you back first and inform them that you have been missing for half a day. I reckon that the palace is worried sick, Rinpoche said to the Empress. If you want to come back, you can come back later. Now that the Empress was here, Rinpoche simply let it go. If the Empress wanted to come, then so be it. It was fine as long as she didn't cause any trouble. However, it would be better if he could control the return time. First, he could control the time freely. Second, he could use it to escape. If his life was in danger, he could return immediately. Who could chase after him? When he returned a few days later, he didn't believe that they would squat in the grass and jump out shouting, Demacia. The Empress nodded after hearing Rinpoche's words and said, although no one can hurt me, my sudden disappearance will indeed cause chaos. I will go back and inform them first. Rinpoche understood that the Empress was going to inform them before returning to continue touring Earth. Your Majesty, grab me, Rinpoche said to the Empress and felt a soft hand grabbing his wrist. Return to that world, return to that world, return to that world. Rinpoche called out in his heart for a long time, but his surroundings were calm. There was no change in his location at all. Return to Deo, return to the palace, return to where I came from. Rinpoche continued to think in his heart. However, there was still no change in his surroundings. The two of them didn't move at all. This gave him a bad premonition. He looked up and saw that the Empress was looking at him with her clear eyes. Return, return to that world, return to Deo, return to the palace, return to where I came from. Rinpoche simply closed his eyes and recited. When he opened his eyes again, he was still in the same place. The Empress was still looking at him and that hand was still grabbing his wrist. Your Majesty, it seems like we can't go back for the time being. I reckon that the battery isn't fully charged. Rinpoche said awkwardly. That was the only explanation for the current situation. He hoped that he wouldn't be unable to return. If that was the case, there would be a huge mess. Based on the previous transmigration situation, it would probably take 3 days to return. However, it was best for him to try it every once in a while. Chapter 143. As Rinpoche was tidying up his room, his phone rang. He picked it up and saw that it was his father. Please don't create any more trouble. Rinpoche was reluctant, but he still answered the call. I hope I'm not disturbing you? Papa Rin asked with a smile. What's the matter? Say it, Rinpoche said weakly. Bring your girlfriend home for a meal. Your mother and I want to see her. You are thinking too much. She's my business partner, not my girlfriend, Rinpoche denied flatly. If that's the case, I'm afraid your mother will have to make arrangements for you again. Do as you see fit. Rinpoche was furious. He was afraid that he wouldn't die fast enough. If my mother makes arrangements again, I will bring a boyfriend home. After finishing his sentence, he hung up the phone and switched it off. What did he say? Mama Rin asked from the sofa. He said he wants to find a boyfriend. Papa Ren's face turned green. Rinpoche tidied up the house in a mess. When he went downstairs, he saw the Empress eating the ice cream. There were already 3 ice cream packages on the coffee table. Your Majesty, this is too cold. It will hurt your stomach if you eat too much of it, Rinpoche couldn't help but say. The first thing the Empress learned to do after coming to Earth was to open the fridge to take ice cream. I want the ice cream from the one just now. The Empress finished the last bit of ice cream and put the ice cream stick on the coffee table. Then she pointed to the television and said, the one on the television was Pearl Harbor. Other than airplanes, there were only warships. Your Majesty, I will do my best, but this will take time. After all, modern technology is a very sophisticated system. The object that you saw is made up of countless small parts. We have to lay a good foundation, and only when Deo's technology reaches a certain level can we achieve this. Just like practicing martial arts, We can't immediately reach the earth wheel level without even getting started, Rinpoche said helplessly. The Empress nodded her head in agreement. What kind of weapon can destroy a city from 1,000 miles away? The Empress asked curiously. The Empress had seen those things on the television just now. Unless it was an expert like her, ordinary aboriginals would find it hard to defend against it. The main reason was that it was too densely packed and many experts couldn't avoid it. This gave her some respect for Earth's technology. Although it could be seen from the television that the people here were all very weak, the destructive power of those machines was very strong. Rinpoche searched for the video of the atomic bomb explosion and played it. The screen was black and white. At the beginning, it was a group of people talking about something. At the same time, there was an epic background music playing. It was easy to get people excited. Chapter 144. I want to go out and take a look. When Rinpoche heard this, he was immediately awakened from his thoughts. His face was stiff like a robot as he turned to look at the Empress. This man was indeed not someone who could live in a house. Rinpoche roared in his heart. Follow me out. The Empress looked at Rinpoche seriously and said, Your Majesty. I can go out, but I'm afraid I can't address you as Your Majesty outside. We don't have an emperor here. Even if there is one, it's not you. Rinpoche looked bitter. I understand this. But you don't have an emperor? Who governs the country? The Empress was flabbergasted. We are a democracy here and the country's leader is elected. Rinpoche roughly explained. Even though he didn't understand politics, he still knew the basics. I understand. Follow me out and take a look. The Empress roughly understood and thought that if someone asked her to go down, she would slap him to death. The people in this world were too weak. Your Majesty, I'm afraid your clothes won't do, Rinpoche said. I still need to prepare some clothes for you. Go quickly. The Empress waved her hand. Rinpoche helplessly turned on his phone and saw a bunch of missed calls. They were all from his parents. You are my little apple. The phone rang again and the caller ID was still, Dad. Rinpoche picked up the phone and prepared to go to the second floor to answer the call. If he didn't answer the call, his parents would probably rush over overnight. However, he saw the Empress looking at him with a burning gaze. Is someone communicating with you from a distance? Is there anything you are afraid of me knowing? Rinpoche didn't expect the Empress to remember it so clearly and react so quickly. She had never used it before, but she immediately knew that he was going to answer the call. It's from my parents. Rinpoche looked bitter. You're not allowed to leave, sit down. The Empress looked at him. Dad, Mom, please don't say anything overboard. Rinpoche prayed in his heart while looking at the Empress. He didn't know why the Empress suddenly became so interested and stared at him. You are my little apple. This damn ringtone made Rinpoche very upset. He clenched his teeth and had no choice but to answer the call. Immediately, a voice came from the other end of the line. You have grown guts. You actually hung up and turned off your phone? Son, don't tell me you really like men. I'm telling you, if you bring a man back, we'll immediately break off our mother-son relationship. Rinpoche's parents were shouting from the other end of the electric sparks. Rinpoche's face turned ashen as he hung up the call. He almost smashed the phone. Beside him, the Empress's face froze. Are you gay? Rinpoche spat out a mouthful of blood. It's a misunderstanding. Your Majesty, this is definitely a misunderstanding. He opened his phone and scrolled through his contact list. In the end, there was only one person he could choose. Seeing that the Empress didn't care about him, Rinpoche took his phone and walked to the kitchen to make a call. You are back. Jiang Nan's gentle voice came from the other end of the phone. Rinpoche suddenly felt that this was what a girl should be like. The Empress was really too dignified, cold, and easily flipped out. Yes, can you help me buy some women's clothes and shoes and send them over? I need them urgently, Rinpoche whispered. Hello? Hello. Are they torn? Be careful next time. I happen to have time so I can help you. But when did you get a girlfriend? Jiang Nan asked with a smile. It's not what you think. She's about 1.7 meters tall and weighs about 50 kilograms. It's best to wear a conservative red dress. Add a jacket and shoes. Give me a pair of size 36, 37, 38 and 39. I want flat shoes. Rinpoche understood the Chinese way of thinking too well. As long as there was something, they would think in that direction. He couldn't be bothered to explain further. Do you want underwear? Rinpoche clenched his teeth and said, Yes, it's probably C by a few more sizes. Do you have any other requests? There's nothing else. Just do as you see fit from top to bottom as long as they match well. Also, don't tell Qin, Rinpoche exhorted. It's too late, he's just beside me, Jiang Nan said with a smile. Qin immediately shouted from the other end of the phone, "You're still hiding and don't dare to show your face. Alright, just send them to my door. Let's not see each other today, I'll look for you for a meal in the future," Rinpoche whispered. Jiang Nan smiled and hung up the phone. I heard a woman's voice, the Empress said unhurriedly as she sat on the sofa. I can't leave, so I can only ask someone else to buy it, Rinpoche said to the Empress. Oh. The Empress snorted softly and didn't mind. In fact, she heard Rinpoche's voice clearly, but she still said something inexplicably. Your Majesty, I have something to discuss with you. The Empress turned and looked at him. Your Majesty, you can't address yourself as I in this world. I'm afraid I have to address you by your name, or you can choose another name, Rinpoche said. I allow you to call me by my name in this world, the Empress said. After we go out, if Your Majesty, what do you like, you can tell me. You have to pay to buy things. Rinpoche opened his mouth but didn't say anything. You have to pay even in Dayo. Do you think I'm a 3-year-old child? The Empress said unhappily. I'm specially following behind your Majesty to help you pay your bills. Rinpoche immediately changed his tune. The Empress then nodded her head and revealed a smile on her face. She agreed with Rinpoche's words. No matter what happens outside, you must not be impulsive. Leave it to me. If someone offends you, it's because they don't know your identity. I hope your Majesty won't be angry. Fighting on the streets is strictly prohibited in this world, and killing is even more prohibited. If anything happens, the police will immediately come to investigate, which is equivalent to Dayo's Public Order Bureau. If something happens, your Majesty's identity will be easily exposed. The Empress continued to nod her head. I can set 3 rules with you. Chapter 145. Zixiao. Rinpoche was perspiring profusely as he looked at the Empress. I allow it. The Empress nodded her head. Your Majesty, you have to call me that in this world, Rinpoche corrected her. Well, I allow you to call me by my name, the Empress corrected him. Zixiao, where do you want to see? Rinpoche asked. You said that the commoners here live and work in peace and contentment. Let's go and take a look. I want to see how the commoners in your world live, the Empress said after thinking for a while. Then let's go to the supermarkets and shopping malls. Those are the most crowded places. However, due to the large number of people, they might accidentally touch you. Don't get angry, Rinpoche warned her again. I got it. Since I have made an agreement with you, I will not go back on my word, the Empress said impatiently. Your Majesty, you might not know how to wear the clothes in this world. I have to inform you about this, Rinpoche said as he searched for bra on his phone. Then he showed the photo of the phone to the Empress. The Empress saw a photo of a woman wearing a bra on the screen. The phone instantly appeared in her hand and 3 of her fingers exerted force. Boom, the phone exploded. Even the battery exploded. There was no injury on the Empress's hand. What do you want to say? The Empress asked unhappily. Rinpoche opened his mouth and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I'm afraid that your Majesty won't be able to wear the clothes in this world. You can tell me how to wear it when the time comes, the Empress said coldly and turned her head to look out of the window. But I was going to tell you how to wear it just now. Rinpoche thought helplessly, but he couldn't say anything. It was a pity that his phone had died a tragic death. Could it be that he had to wear a bra to demonstrate to the Empress later? It seemed like this was the only way. Even though he only knew how to remove the bra, he didn't know how to wear it. After waiting for a long time, the sky was about to turn dark. Rinpoche then heard someone knocking on the door. There's someone outside. The Empress turned her head and looked over. The clothes are here. I will go out to get them after they leave, Rinpoche said. He didn't want to see Qin and Jiang Nan now, especially not to let the Empress see them. Even though the Empress had promised him that she wouldn't get angry easily, he felt that it was better not to complicate matters. After about 10 minutes, Rinpoche stood up and looked through the peephole. There was no one there. After pushing open the door, he saw 7 to 8 bags and boxes on the ground. Rinpoche carefully carried all of them to the entrance of the house. Fortunately, the 2 of them didn't turn around and hide somewhere. It had to be said that it was a very heartwarming thing to have such an understanding friend. Chapter 146. After a long time, the Empress changed her clothes and came out of the room. Ren Baqian's eyes immediately lit up. Even though she was still wearing a red dress, the modern and exquisite red dress gave off a different vibe. She became more charming. However, her expression was still as cold as ever, seemingly colder than before. This greatly reduced her charm. "Let's go out and take a look," the Empress said coldly. The Empress said coldly. It was as if nothing had happened just now and she had returned to her original state. Ren Baqian suddenly felt that the Empress who was trembling slightly in the room was just his imagination. The one in front of him was the real Empress. This was what the Empress should look like. All right. Ren Baqian nodded his head. He went back to his room to change his clothes, took his wallet and keys, cut off the label on his coat, and draped it over the Empress. "It's a little cold outside. Even though you won't be affected, you still have to put on a show for ordinary people," Ren Baqian said softly. Even though he felt that the lady he saw in the room just now was an illusion, there were still some changes in his heart. Some soft spots in the bottom of his heart were touched. He didn't know if he was more afraid of the Empress or if he had more feelings for her. It would be a lie to say that he wasn't moved when such a lady chose him as her husband. It was just that the Empress's might had completely suppressed this feeling in his heart. At this moment, this feeling sprouted again. It was just that he didn't know when it would blossom. The Empress didn't reject him and didn't look at him. She just stood there and let him drape the coat over her. The coat was black and made of wool. The style was very simple, but it was also very easy to match. Jiang Nan had indeed put in a lot of effort. After draping the coat over the Empress, the two of them went out and took the elevator down. Ren Baqian conveniently explained, "This is an elevator, it can transport people and goods up and down quickly." The Empress could feel a slight sense of weightlessness. "What's written on it?" The Empress finally opened her mouth and pointed to the button. "It's written in numbers 1, 2, 3. Each number represents a floor," Ren Baqian patiently explained. The Empress slowly memorized these numbers in her heart. "It's out, I want to see what it looks like." Qin Qing sat in the driver's seat with a smile on his face as he looked at the two people walking out from a distance. "You're too naughty." Jiang Nan smiled gently. She knew that Qin Qing was just curious. As the two of them approached, their eyes widened in shock. The lady walking beside Ren Baqian was like a fairy from the world. Even in modern society, people had seen countless celebrities and idols, but this lady gave off a different vibe. She was classical, elegant, and all kinds of words could be used to describe her. Even a girl from Jiangnan was captivated. "Pinch me, I want to see if I'm dreaming. Where did 8,000-year-old find such a person?" Qin Qing smacked his lips. "What do you think?" Jiangnan glared at him. "It's too high and too cold. I can only look at it from afar. It's out of my league." Qin Qing shook his head. Yes, he was too tall and too cold. If someone said that such a person didn't have a background, he wouldn't believe it even if he was beaten to death. She was from a small family. No matter how beautiful she was, it was impossible for her to give others such a feeling. Even a rich second generation like Qin Qing felt that he could not get close to her. Nowadays people, especially those who had some family background, had more or less seen the world. They could more or less tell a person's social class. It was impossible for them to not have this little bit of discernment. "I just want someone to grow old with. As for those who are too high class, let's stay away from them." Qin Qing held Jiang Nan's hand and said. Jiang Nan felt the warmth on her hand and revealed a smile. "However, I'm really curious how she got together with 8,000-year-old. Qin Qing's words made Jiang Nan nod her head. A phoenix couldn't travel together with a sparrow. However, this scene happened in front of the two of them. Ren Baqian didn't notice the two of them. The Empress noticed them but ignored them. Why would she care about the gazes of ordinary people? The two of them were in the underground car park. The Empress looked at the steel beasts on both sides curiously. Ren Baqian pulled out the front passenger seat for her. This way it would be easier for the two of them to talk and introduce some things to her. As Ren Baqian drove the car out of the car park steadily, the Empress asked, "This is the thing that you said can run without a horse, right? This is driven by gasoline and is completely mechanical. It's the main mode of transportation for the people here." Ren Baqian nodded his head and explained. The Empress remembered what he said very clearly. Just now, the Empress did see a lot of cars in the underground car park. This kind of thing was very common here. It was still snowing outside. Ren Baqian drove at a moderate speed, allowing the Empress to clearly see the scenery on both sides. When they first left the neighborhood, it was still a little secluded. As the car moved forward, the number of cars in the surroundings started to increase. There were more and more people on both sides of the road. The storefronts were getting more and more beautiful and the buildings were getting taller and taller. At this moment, the sky was almost dark. The storefronts on both sides of the road had switched on their lights. The signboards were also lit up. The street lights were also switched on. Everywhere was filled with splendid lights. The Empress stared outside and didn't speak to Ren Baqin. Everything that she saw in front of her had indeed shocked her. Even though she saw a lot of things in the room, it was more of a novelty. What she saw now was a highly developed society. It was a society that was completely different from Dayo. Just by looking at the clothes of the passers-by, the buildings, and those splendid lights, one could see the level of development of this world. Who built those lights on the pole? The Empress looked at the street lights that were placed at intervals and finally couldn't help but ask. From just now until now, she didn't see any dark places. Everywhere was sprinkled with lights. In addition to the fluttering snow outside, this was really a dreamlike city. It's built for the city? It can be considered as a city's basic construction. There are many basic constructions in a city. For example, drainage facilities like sewers, basic electricity, running water, street lights, and roads are all part of a city's basic construction. In addition, there are also public facilities like plazas, parks, and other places for people to relax and entertain, Rinpoche explained to the Empress while staring at the road with rapt attention. Will my country become like this one day? The Empress looked at the surrounding scenery with envy in her eyes. Such a scenery made it impossible for her to remain indifferent. With me around, it will definitely be possible. Rinpoche finally shifted his gaze from the road in front of him to the Empress and said energetically. Chapter 147. We're here. Rinpoche stopped the car and opened the door for the Empress. To the onlookers he looked like a gentleman. Snow fell on their heads. The Empress looked up at the sky happily. Under the illumination of the lights, snowflakes fell like fairies in the night sky and landed on her head and body. However, when they landed on the Empress's hair, they instantly disappeared. Let's go in. Rinpoche tightened the Empress's coat. The two of them were in a relatively large supermarket. Rinpoche felt that the Empress might be more interested in this place. This was the best place to observe the daily lives of ordinary people in China. There are a lot of people. The Empress looked at the entrance of the supermarket and said, in Dayo there wasn't such a dense flow of people. Of course, there wasn't such a large store either. Rinpoche and the Empress walked in side by side. It wasn't suitable to walk half a step behind. Furthermore, Rinpoche had to help the Empress fend off the surrounding people. Whether it was because he was afraid of the Empress's anger or because the Empress was his future wife in name, his actions were very natural. To outsiders there wasn't anything strange about it. Rinpoche didn't know what he was feeling at the moment. He just wanted to do it. Perhaps it was more of the former, but it wasn't necessarily the latter. However, Rinpoche quickly realized that even though there were people coming and going here, everyone subconsciously changed their movements when they got close to the Empress. No one was within half a meter of her. The most eye-catching thing about the Empress was that she was too beautiful, especially with her temperament. That kind of nobility and indifference combined together made her look like someone who shouldn't be in this place. Even though she gave off a cold feeling, she still attracted the attention of passers-by. The two of them entered the supermarket. Rinpoche pushed a cart and walked side by side with the Empress. The Empress's gaze was on the dazzling lineup of goods on both sides. There were so many goods that she was dazzled. These are potato chips, considered a type of snack. They aren't very healthy. Every time Rinpoche noticed that the Empress's gaze lingered on an item, he would softly explain and put the item into the cart basket. These are biscuits, a food that is occasionally used to satisfy one's hunger. The taste depends on one's personal preference. These are canned fruits that are drained and can be stored for a long time. This is salt. When Rinpoche mentioned salt, the Empress picked up the bag of salt, observed it carefully and said, it's very white, almost the same as the salt used in the palace. How much can one tael of silver buy? Rinpoche did some calculations. One tael of silver was 500 grams, which was about 2,000 yuan. I can buy 1,000 bags. The Empress looked at Rinpoche and said, in Dayo one tael of silver can only buy so much. Rinpoche nodded. He understood this matter. In Dayo one tael of silver could buy a caddy of salt. Furthermore, the salt was coarse and had a poor color. This kind of fine salt could only be bought with one tael of silver. The difference between the two worlds was 1,000 times. I want this. If we go to war with Great Xia, I'm afraid it will be very difficult to buy it from the Yin nation and the Qin nation. The Empress turned her head and looked at Rinpochen. Her eyes were filled with vigor as she waited for his reply. For the first time the word yes was added to her words. I want this, and I want this. Even though there was only a difference of one word, the feeling it gave off was very different. Rinpochen hesitated for a while and said, I know a place that can produce salt. It's on Nine Peaks Mountain in the southwest of Lan City. I heard that there's a poisonous black pond there that can be filtered to produce well salt. However, I don't have much confidence in this matter, so I didn't tell you. I originally wanted to talk about this matter after the sweet potatoes are ripe. If you can do what you said, I will remember your great merit. After we return and settle the matter of the iron or mine, we will settle this first. If we can produce salt, we will have less apprehension in the future and won't have to worry about other things when we go to war with Great Xia. After all, if the commoners don't have salt to eat, they won't be able to survive, the Empress said as she looked at Rinpochen. I understand. I will do my best to settle these matters. Rinpochen nodded. The Empress carefully looked into his eyes and nodded her head. The two of them continued to move forward. Even though they didn't pay attention, many people nearby were looking at them. Or rather, they were looking at the Empress. This is a toothbrush and toothpaste for brushing teeth. There's no need to use willow twigs. This is a shower gel and shampoo. Rinpochen was putting the things into the cart as he pushed the cart. These were all things that he prepared for the Empress. At this moment he really felt like a couple shopping in a supermarket. If they did this often it wouldn't be too bad. Regardless of whether it was the daily necessities or the food, there were many different brands. The variety made the Empress exclaim in admiration. The variety of goods in Dayo was really too little and couldn't be compared at all. Finally, the two of them picked some fruits and vegetables that the Empress was interested in before paying the bill and leaving. A few men who had been following them and looking at them from afar felt a little lost. Their hearts were filled with envy, jealousy, and hatred for Rinpochen. After walking one round in the supermarket, the Empress had a clearer understanding of the abundance and variety of goods on earth. He was saying this to the Empress as well as himself. Chapter 148. His Majesty hasn't been found yet. If there's any news, we'll send it back immediately. In a mansion, two old men sat opposite each other. One of them frowned slightly. That demon should have been killed long ago. Otherwise, such a thing wouldn't have happened. If anything were to happen to His Majesty, the consequences would be unimaginable. The one who spoke was Junior Elder Zhikohai. Opposite him was the Great Elder Shiqing. His eyes were shut and his face was filled with worry. The disappearance of the Empress was too big of a deal. Even though Xenja was suppressing it as time passed, the others also felt that something was amiss. In the evening, these two big shots entered the palace together. Only then did they realize that Xenja actually dared to suppress such a huge matter. At this time, the monitoring division was conducting a massive search in the city. The left army had also been mobilized to search the vicinity of Lan City. Such a big move had already aroused many people's suspicions. This matter could at most be suppressed for another day. If Her Majesty could not be found by noon tomorrow, it would really be a mess. I think we should inform the General-in-Chief who supports the nation about this, Zhikohai said after thinking for a long time. There's no need for that now. If we can't find His Majesty by noon tomorrow, we'll have to inform the General-in-Chief who supports the nation to make preparations, Shiqing sighed. Xenja also deserves to die. She was protecting Her Majesty, but Her Majesty went missing in the palace. Yet she still tried in vain to suppress the matter and hide it. Damn it. If it wasn't for the fact that she still had to lead the palace guards in the search, she would have been thrown into prison first. It was His Majesty who insisted on beheading her in public, Zhikohai continued. Shiqing continued to close his eyes in silence. Now, his eyebrows were almost twisted into a fried dough twist, and his already wrinkled face looked even older. The two of them sat facing each other from late at night until dawn. Zhikohai stood up and said, An entire night has passed and there's still no news. It's best to prepare early. Shiqing, who had been sitting there all this while, suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes shone brightly as he asked, What are you doing? Zhikohai lowered his head to look at Shiqing and said, If His Majesty is not found by today, then someone will definitely find out and there will be chaos. We should prepare for this matter as soon as possible. Shiqing stared at him for a long time before closing his eyes again. Zhikohai left the house and snorted coldly after getting into the car. His Majesty had been missing for a day and a night in the palace. It was possible that he would never return. If they still couldn't find His Majesty after a few days, they could ask that person to come back. Renbachien felt that this little girl was too easy to fool. In any case, he only had a few more days to learn. Furthermore, his current status was different, and he didn't need to be as careful as before. As such, he didn't really care about these things. Previously, he brought some candies with him and gave them to the Empress. There were still some left. In one afternoon, Renbachien memorized more than 300 characters. He had also learned quite a lot previously. In another 5 to 6 days he would be able to memorize all of them. At the same time, he had an idea. When he returned to Yangxin Palace Hall, he would create a comparison table between this character and Chinese characters. At that time, he would hire a few programmers to create a comparison software that could directly translate the Chinese characters from the book. This would save him a lot of trouble. After leaving Qingxin Palace Hall, just as he reached the entrance of Pingle Park, the imperial bodyguard called out to him, "Storyteller Ren, Her Majesty summons you to Yangxin Palace Hall to accompany her for a meal." Renbachien nodded his head. He placed the notebook that was filled with annotations back in his room before heading to Yangxin Palace Hall to meet Her Majesty. As always, it was cold and empty. The Empress had changed back to her usual red muslin dress and a white undergarment. She sat alone on the couch with a table in front of her. There were 4 dishes and a soup on it. There was also a chair in front of the table. "Your Majesty," Renbachien greeted her. He looked around and didn't see Qing Yuan or Hong Yuan. The Empress was the only one in the empty palace hall. "Have a seat." When the Empress saw Renbachien's arrival, she felt a little happy. Her heart was moved a few times, but she eventually said, "Have a seat." Indeed, this was the Empress. Renbachien thought as he sat down. During the meal, the two of them didn't speak anymore. Renbachien always moved the dishes that the Empress wanted to eat in front of her. This made her feel warmth flowing in her heart. The same thing done by different people gave her different feelings. After dinner, the Empress asked, "When are you preparing to set off?" Renbachien understood that she was talking about the iron ore mine. This matter had always been the top priority in her heart. Chapter 150. Friendly reminder, the original chapters 145 and 146 have become 146 and 147. The contents of the original chapter 145 have been changed. One more chapter has been added. "Your Majesty, please kill this man and choose another husband," Zhikohai suddenly said. The Empress narrowed her eyes and a cold glint flickered in her eyes. The next second, the Empress appeared in front of Zhikohai, grabbed him by the throat and lifted him up. "Your Majesty, please show mercy." Shi Qing's expression changed. Although he didn't like Zhikohai, he couldn't let him die. The Empress carried Zhikohai and stared into his eyes until his face turned red and he was almost out of breath. Only then did she casually throw him aside. "It's none of your business to meddle in my affairs. You may leave," the Empress said coldly and turned back to her couch. Zhikohai covered his throat as he gasped for air. Then he got up, bowed to the Empress and left. Outside the palace, Shi Qing looked at Zhikohai and asked, "Why did you say that?" "His Majesty's private affairs are not for us to interfere." This was something he could not understand. This is no longer a private matter. He has bewitched His Majesty in the palace and will inevitably cause a great disaster in the future. "I feel that even if Your Majesty doesn't like it as a subject, I still have to remind Your Majesty," Zhikohai said. Shi Qing looked at Zhikohai, not saying a word for a long time. He didn't believe Zhikohai's words. The person in front of him was the one who disliked the Empress the most. The person with the most complicated thoughts was also the person in front of him. Sometimes, Shi Qing even felt that he was just wearing the skin of an aboriginal. Shi Qing would never believe that he was doing this for the good of His Majesty, risking his own life and risking the wrath of His Majesty. So what was his goal? Watching Zhikohai get into the car and leave, Shi Qing stood there for a long time before he shook his head slightly and stopped thinking about him. He had too many thoughts on his mind. However, where exactly did Her Majesty and Storyteller Ren go? He was also extremely curious. He just knew that if His Majesty wanted to tell him, he would naturally know. If His Majesty didn't want to say it, then there was no need for him to ask. The Empress sighed a long time after the two of them had left. "Your Majesty, what's wrong? Is something bothering you?" Hong Yuan took a few steps forward and massaged the Empress's shoulders. Pour some wine for me, the empress ordered. Although it was early in the morning, she still felt that it was in the evening before they returned. She liked to drink. She could suppress everything. This was her way of soothing her mood, especially when his heart was in a mess. At this moment, her heart was in a mess. After Rinpoche was done with the visualization of water, he slept in his room for the entire morning. However, he quickly cleared away the distracting thoughts in his mind and started to visualize the visualization of water. After a while, Rinpoche opened his eyes helplessly and said to the people around him, "I'll have to trouble the few of you to go outside the courtyard. I'm not used to all of you standing here. I'm afraid of strangers. You can come in later." After they left, he closed his eyes and started to visualize again. Even though there was still the sound of burning firewood, it didn't affect him much. It was still filled with a faint mist and he couldn't see far into the distance. Only the lake and a few trees seemed to exist. Rinpoche walked into the lake. When he started to swim forward, he started to realize that something was wrong. The surrounding water started to form waves. Even though it wasn't big, it was more exhausting than the stagnant water he used to swim in. Moreover, there were traces of dark green things in the water that looked like aquatic plants that wrapped around his body. It was as if he was carrying a heavy object on his back and swam even slower. It took him a longer time to swim to the center of the lake. Then he tried his best to dive down. This time, he woke up from exhaustion before he could reach his previous position. Rinpoche shook his head. He was still mentally exhausted and his body was swollen in pain. When he looked down at the medicinal bath below him, the color had become much lighter. It seemed like the medicinal efficacy had been absorbed into his body. The medicinal efficacy of this medicinal bath would take at least a week to be digested and gradually change his body. Rinpoche returned to his bed to rest for a while before looking for the empress. However, the empress hadn't come down from the court session yet, so he waited outside Yangxin Palace Hall. After a long time, Rinpoche heard voices from afar and knew that the empress had returned. "All of you can leave. Exenja, you don't have to follow me." The empress waved her hand at the people behind her. After everyone left, she said to Rinpoche, "Follow me." The inner treasury of the palace was located in a rather secretive place in the palace. It was completely made of stone and didn't have any windows. After the thick metal door was opened, the imperial bodyguard passed the torch to the both of them and left. Rinpoche held the torch and followed the empress. Under the empress's guidance, they lit up the braziers in the inner treasury. At this moment, the inner treasury was lit up. This place was smaller than what Rinpoche had imagined. It was divided into two levels. On one level there were many shelves with swords, weapons and armors. On the surrounding walls there were boxes of gold, silver, jewelry and the like. These were all gifts from the empress during her birthday celebration. Most of them were gold and silver. Only a few small boxes contained jewelry. Not only was Qi Zixiao the Empress of Deyo, but she was also extremely talented and the seventh most powerful expert in the world. To be fancied by such a woman, that brat must have accumulated several lifetimes of good fortune. The True Tao sect was a small sect that not many people knew about 10 years ago. 10 years ago, a person rose to prominence and became known to the whole world. "Senior sister, that Qi Zixiao is really arrogant. He even dared to accept such words. He really doesn't care about the heroes of the world." A 16 or 17-year-old girl in the audience who was dressed like a Taoist nun wrinkled her nose and said angrily. In front of her was a peerlessly beautiful woman who was also dressed like a Taoist nun. She wore a tall crown on her head and a headband on her forehead. At this moment, the woman was looking at him with a smile. "Senior sister, you're always like this. You don't care about anything," the young girl said angrily. "That's all there is to the world. What's there to fight about?" The woman smiled. "You're the third most powerful expert in the world. If I were as capable as you, I would have taught her a lesson long ago. She's merely the seventh most powerful expert in the world, yet she's so arrogant. I'm angry for you, but why aren't you reacting at all?" The young girl said angrily as she slammed the table. "If you weren't so impatient, you would definitely be much stronger than you are now. Have you done your homework today?" The woman's smile was calm and full of indifference and modesty. Anyone who saw her would know that she was the third most powerful expert in the world, Li Yuanzhu. The young girl was so angry that she snorted twice. After a while, she hung her head dejectedly. "You're almost like a statue of a god. After a short while, she rolled her eyes and was overjoyed. I heard that Qi Zixiao found a pretty boy who doesn't know any martial arts and only knows how to flatter. It's so ridiculous that he was actually tricked by just one sentence. Even I wouldn't be that stupid. Li Yuanzhu smiled and looked at the young girl. After a while she said, "That's not necessarily true." No one knew if she was saying that she wouldn't be that stupid or if she had other meanings. Ren Baqin naturally didn't know what his reputation had become after the departure of those people and the coming and going of the merchant caravans. Even if he knew, there was nothing he could do. In fact, not only did the outside world think so, but the entire imperial court and the ordinary aboriginal people also thought so. However, Her Majesty was insistent and extremely kind, so everyone had no choice but to accept it. After persevering in his training for the past few days, Ren Baqin felt that his physique seemed to have improved a lot. At the very least, it was harder for him to get tired, and his strength had also increased. Originally, he only had 120 kilograms of strength, but now he had 135 kilograms of strength. Sitting in the car, he searched the internet on his phone for a long time before realizing that it was much more troublesome than he had imagined. Since he did not have a certificate of origin, large organizations and legitimate companies would not accept him. Some people had their own channels and did not need to consider this aspect, but in his hands, it was no different from holding stolen goods, except that there was no owner. Then there were some small companies, but it was hard to say how much these things would be worth if they were in front of them. After searching on the internet for a long time, he found all kinds of messy information, but not much of it was valuable. Ren Baqin closed the web page. After thinking about it, he was afraid that he would have to look for Qin Qing. At the very least, with his status and connections, he might be able to find a way to help. He sent a message to Qin Qing, and not long after, Qin Qing gave him a call. "Yo, 8,000-year-old didn't go to Wing together. Why did you think of me today?" "Where? Let's have lunch," Ren Baqin said. "The law firm has been very busy recently. They are working on a case. Let's meet downstairs at the law firm later. There is a restaurant that is not bad. Give me a call when you arrive." Ren Baqin could hear the sound of typing coming from the other end of the phone. "All right." An hour later, Ren Baqin arrived at the law firm where Qin Qing worked and gave him a call. 5 minutes later, he saw Qin Qing jogging down the road, opening the car door and sitting in the front passenger seat. "So busy recently? It's really rare to see young Master Qin like this." "I can't help it. People who are getting married have to support their families." Ren Baqin looked at him with disdain. His annual salary was not even enough to cover his monthly expenses. "Don't you feel guilty for saying this? If you really want to support your family, you can just go back and take over your father's business." "Why are you looking for me?" Qin Qing asked. "Let's talk when we reach the restaurant." After a while, both of them sat in a private room of the restaurant. Ren Baqin took out 2 red and 3 green gems from a cloth bag and placed them on the table. "Help me see if there is any way to sell them. Where did you get them from? Are they stolen goods? Or did you rob tombs in the mountains a few days ago? Don't forget that I'm a lawyer." Qin Qing looked at the gems on the table and was not in a hurry to look at them. Instead, he joked. "Plain stuff. It's just that I can't tell you where I got them from, so I have to look for you." After hearing what he said, Qin Qing held the gems in his hands and looked at them carefully. The 2 rubies were the size of a thumbnail. Furthermore, it was obvious that they had been polished. The color was deep red like a ball of flame. Looking at them against the sunlight, the interior was extremely clean. There were only a few cracks on the edges. The 2 rubies were about the same size and their purity was also very close. As for the emerald, it was emitting a deep green color. Its purity was also very good, but it was slightly inferior to the 2 rubies. "I don't really understand these things, but I have seen a few of them in the past. The price of these gems should not be low. I can help you contact someone to sell them, but I can't tell you the source. The other party might want to lower the price," Qin Qing said as he placed the gems in front of Ren Baqin. "Understood." Ren Baqin nodded. He didn't even think about selling them at the market price. As long as he could sell them at a similar price, it would be fine. Qin Qing saw that Ren Baqin understood, and that made things easier. He made a phone call and chatted for a while. Then he said, "Fatty Su, one of my brothers has a few gems that he wants to sell. Come over and take a look." After that, he told Ren Baqin the address and hung up the phone. "Keep them first. We will talk about it when Fatty Su is here," Qin Qing said to Ren Baqin. While the 2 of them were waiting, Qin Qing hesitated for a while and said to Ren Baqin, I saw you with a woman the last time. Rinpoche immediately looked at him from the corner of his eyes. Don't tell me you are waiting for me to go out in the neighborhood? That's not important. Chen Qing waved his hand and said to him seriously, that woman is indeed beautiful. Her family background should not be ordinary. With one look, I can tell that she is not someone that can be raised by a small family. Not to mention a small family, even an ordinary official's family would not be able to raise her. Only those big shots can. You can be considered to be successful. Let's not talk about other things. When the medicine hits the market, you will definitely be worth hundreds of millions. But in the eyes of some people, you are no different from an ordinary person. What I mean by this is that in our country, people of equal social status are still very important. Your status is too different from hers. You might be fated to be together for a period of time, but don't fall too deeply into it. Thank you, Rinpoche said. Although Chen Qing's words were not pleasant to hear, for him to say these words to Rinpoche meant that he really treated Rinpoche as a friend. Rinpoche had to admit that Chen Qing's eyes were indeed very sharp. He could actually see so much just by looking at Rinpoche from afar. Chapter 154. The fatty Su that Chen Qing mentioned did not make the two of them wait for too long. He was about 25 or 26 years old and wore a pair of gold-rimmed glasses. He looked refined if not for his physique. His initial estimate was that he was at least 100 kilograms. His muscles trembled with every step he took. Hello. You must be young Master Chen's friend. You can just call me Fatty Su. Fatty Su took off his glasses and scanned the room. Then he shook hands with Rinpoche and said, I'm Rinpoche. Rinpoche introduced himself. Oh, 8,000 years old? In ancient times you would be a prince. You're amazing. Fatty Su laughed out loud. He was tactful and enthusiastic but not annoying. Rinpoche's heart skipped a beat when he heard this. He might really become a prince consort. Who did father get to come up with the name? Taizi, it's rare for you to think of me when something good happens. Fatty Su patted Chen Qing's shoulder and sat down on a chair. Soon after, he seemed to feel a little uncomfortable and pulled another chair together. Only then did he sit down steadily and began to wipe the mist off his spectacles. Isn't it a good thing that I'm married? When the time comes, I'll definitely ask you to send a gift. Chen Qing also laughed. This is necessary. Have you decided on a date? Rinpoche turned around and asked Chen Qing. Previously, it was the engagement banquet. He was not sure if Chen Qing and Jiang Nan were engaged for the wedding banquet. May 1st next year. Even if you didn't ask me, I would have informed you by then, Chen Qing said. After chatting for a while, Chen Qing said to Fatty Su, this brother of mine has something to sell. It's clean but there aren't any procedures. Take a look. If you can accept it, then accept it. If you can't, then find a way. We're brothers, don't act like you're trying to fool an outsider. Don't worry. It won't be a problem. Let's make friends. Fatty Su immediately patted his chest. His family owns the Suji Jewelry Company. They are very knowledgeable about this industry, Chen Qing explained. Shuji Jewelry was one of the largest jewelry stores in the city. There were 6 stores in the city alone, and there were also stores in the surrounding provinces and cities. It could be considered to be quite famous. Rinpoche placed a few gemstones on the round table and said, sorry to trouble you. Fatty Su turned the table, and a few gemstones appeared in front of him. Then he took out a white cloth, tweezers, gloves, magnifying glass and a filter from his bag and placed them on the table one by one. After that, he put on the gloves and placed the gemstones on the white cloth one by one, carefully examining them. While he was inspecting the items, Rinpoche and Chen Qing were waiting there. Rinpoche did not know what the items that he had brought back were like. After which, he and Fatty Su went to the largest jewelry store in the city, Suji Jewelry. After sending the gemstones in for an entire afternoon, they finally waited for the results of the final examination. Fatty Su looked at the report in his hands and said to Rinpoche, Brother Ren, if these items were to be sent to the auction house, they should be worth more than 30 million yuan. The highest price would be 33 million yuan. If there are 2 people who are interested in them at the same time, the bidding price might be even higher. However, I can only offer 25 million yuan. This is already the best I can do. After all, there are still a lot of things to do. These items need to be sent to a bigger auction house, and I'm afraid it will take a few months. With such a huge amount of money, there has to be an explanation. Alright, thank you. Rinpoche nodded his head slightly. It was much better than what he had expected. Even though it seemed like Fatty Su had made a lot of money, if he were to find a random place to sell them, it was possible that someone would offer him 3 million yuan. Next, it was time to sign the agreement. When Rinpoche left, there was already an additional 25 million yuan in his bank account. As for the few pieces of jade pendants and talismans, Rinpoche took them out to let Fatty Su take a look. The jade was good, but it didn't have much historical value. The price was also not high. It was about a few million yuan. If it was in the past, it would be a huge sum of money. However, with 25 million yuan in his bank account, there was no need to rush to sell it. After Rinpoche went out, he first transferred 2 million yuan to his family. Within half an hour, he received a call from his family. The 2 million yuan shocked his parents. Why did you transfer so much money to your family? The company has been doing well recently and I have some spare cash on hand. Use this money to buy a house for Wanyin and a car for Dad, Rinpoche said with a smile. Hearing this, even though his parents were grumbling, they were happy that their son had grown up. After hanging up the phone, Rinpoche looked for a skewer shop. He hadn't had skewers for a long time and was craving for food. During this period he was also thinking about what he should do in the future. His top priority was still the iron or steel making and forging. If he wanted to open a mine, it would be best for him to get some explosives. Those things would definitely increase the mining speed immediately. Otherwise he would just have to rely on those open-pit mines and use pickaxes to dig for metal ores. The mining speed would definitely not be fast. No matter what, it was definitely a good idea to prepare some explosives first. He reckoned that the aboriginals who had never seen gunpowder before would definitely be pleasantly surprised. Chapter 155. The next day Rinpoche once again went to the place where he bought the gun. He asked for Qin Qing's phone number again. Just like before, they were blindfolded and brought in. I want a rifle and mine explosives. After Rinpoche took off his hood, he saw the burly man from before and immediately said, "You want to rob a bank?" The burly man asked in surprise. "If we want to go up the mountain we might have to dig a hole. I need mining explosives that are easy to operate, stable and powerful," Rinpoche said directly. "It's too risky to sell this to you," the big man said, staring at him. Previously he didn't think much of it. However, if explosives were used coupled with what Rinpoche said about digging holes, it immediately reminded him of a profession, grave robbers. Rinpoche couldn't help but laugh bitterly. He was the true good citizen, okay? You can pay more and you don't have to worry about the risk if you use it deep in the mountains. I'm even more careful than you in this regard. After all, I'm not someone who lacks money. This time, I need to go into the mountains for something, and I might need to use explosives in some places. Otherwise, I wouldn't have asked for mine explosives. It would be a waste if he went in because of certain things. Rinpoche's words finally moved the other party. Those who could find their way here were all young masters and not those hooligans on the streets. "How many mine explosives do you need?" 100 kilograms, Rinpoche replied straightforwardly. The burly man pondered for a while. Mining explosives were too cheap. 1 ton only cost 3,000 yuan. Even if Rinpoche increased the price, how much could they sell for? Therefore he looked up at Rinpoche and asked, "How about TNT? 20 kilograms is enough. It's more stable, less prone to problems, and it's easier to carry." Rinpoche was a little surprised at the boldness of this burly man. Previously, when Rinpoche wanted to buy mining explosives, he was still hesitant. In the end he even dared to sell TNT. After all, this was China, not some foreign country. At the thought of going abroad, Rinpoche also felt that if he needed weapons and explosives again, it would be better to do so overseas. It was simply too easy for something to go wrong at home. "Sure, I want 40 kilograms. It's best if it's made into a detonator that can be ignited and detonated." Rinpoche nodded. Previously, he only asked for 100 kilograms of explosives because he wanted to bring only 60 kilograms to Dayo at a time. However, he was afraid that it would not be enough, so he prepared to bring it twice. It was still very dangerous to leave this thing at home. If TNT was used to transport it all at once and it was more powerful, that would be the best. After the other party nodded his head, Rinpoche picked a Type 81 rifle. This type of classic rifle, which imitated the AK, had always been the most popular rifle in the country. The 7.62mm bullet could be fired at twice the speed of a handgun. Its penetrating power was much better than that of a handgun. With 30 bullets in a magazine, Rinpoche felt that he could seriously injure the saber-toothed tiger that he saw previously with this gun. If Rinpoche were to encounter a practitioner like Tong Tong who had just attained the earth wheel level, Rinpoche would be able to shoot a shuttle at him. He definitely wouldn't be able to dodge or block it. 1 gun, 3 magazines and 500 bullets. After paying, Rinpoche was sent back to the car along with the bag containing the guns. As for the TNT explosives, they would not be traded at the other party's place. Instead, they would inform him of the location in 2 days and he would go there directly to pick them up. The money had already been paid together with the gun. For the next few days, while waiting for the explosives, Rinpoche pondered whether he should look for a place abroad. At the very least, it would be more convenient for him to buy weapons and explosives. On the 4th day, Rinpoche obtained the explosives without any delay. He immediately carried 2 big bags back to Pingle Park. This time around he brought back the TNT explosives. Even though he could wait until he reached the mine to collect them, he didn't dare to leave them at home. In addition, there was that Type 81 rifle, bullets, magazines, the Empress's hot pot, base ingredients, dipping sauces, a pair of shoes that the Empress liked very much, and a small amount of candy. Rinpoche looked at the familiar surrounding scenery. He first put down the things, opened the window and looked at the sky outside. It was only evening. Then he carried the hot pot and the pair of shoes to meet the Empress. After waiting outside Yangshin Palace Hall for a while, Rinpoche entered. The Empress was still on the couch drinking wine in boredom. Rinpoche suddenly felt that he should really bring her a laptop to watch movies and animations. However, if he were to nurture the Empress into a 2D expert, he reckoned that he would be committing a grave sin. After thinking about it, it was better to abandon this thought. "Your Majesty, I'm back." As Rinpoche spoke, he went forward and opened the bag, revealing the hot pot inside. When the Empress saw the hot pot, a trace of a smile appeared on her cold face. "Not bad." She turned her head and said to Qing Yuan, "Inform the Imperial Kitchen that there's no need to prepare dinner. Just cut some thin slices of meat and vegetables, a little of each. Also bring some charcoal in a container." Qing Yuan nodded her head in response. When she went out, she was rather curious. What was Her Majesty going to do? After which, the table was brought over and a metal plate was placed on the table. Rinpoche then placed the copper hot pot on it. At the same time, he took out the base ingredients and poured some water on it. After that, everything was ready. All that was left was the meat and charcoal. Seeing that Rinpoche was busy, the Empress opened her mouth and said, "Are we going to set off this time?" "Yes, we can set off tomorrow." "After all, this is an important matter," Rinpoche said. The Empress nodded her head. It was indeed time to set off. By now, the recruitment orders should have already reached the mountains. 3 months was enough to recruit 20,000 soldiers. Even though the training still needed some time, the weapons couldn't be delayed at all. After a while, Qing Yuan and the people from the Imperial Kitchen brought all kinds of things over. The Empress then waved her hand to dismiss Qing Yuan and Hong Luan. After the 2 of them left, the Empress rested her chin on one hand and looked at Rinpoche busying himself. She was somewhat happy. This Yangshin Palace Hall wasn't that deserted anymore. After a while, the water in the hot pot began to boil. Rinpoche first placed the meat slices in the hot pot. Just as he was about to raise his head and tell the Empress that it was time to eat, he happened to see a pair of clear and bright eyes. "Your Majesty, it's time to eat," Rinpoche said softly. At this moment, the 2 of them were sitting opposite each other in the huge Yangshin Palace Hall. The copper hot pot was constantly emitting hot steam and the meat slices were rolling in it. "Pour some wine for me." After Rinpoche was done, the Empress said, "Fill it up for yourself as well." After which, the Empress raised her wine cup and said, "I hope everything goes smoothly for you." "Thank you, Your Majesty," Rinpoche said as he drank the wine in one gulp. He filled up both of their wine cups. The Empress said again, "I will send a group of people to accompany you. You have to take care of yourself." Rinpoche felt warmth in his heart after hearing the Empress's concern. It seemed that after the trip to Earth, the Empress had indeed changed a lot. At the very least, when the 2 of them were facing each other, the Empress looked more feminine. It was as if a layer of ice-cold armor had been removed. This kind of change made him feel happy. The 2 of them ate the hot pot for about 2 hours. Occasionally, they would exchange a few words and drink a mouthful of wine. At other times, they would just stare at the meat slices rolling in the hot pot. They didn't need to talk much. Just by sitting opposite each other and looking at each other, they felt happy in their hearts. If he were to be in charge of the iron mine, his position as a secondary class 8th rank officer would be too low. He would be promoted to the secondary 5th rank, the same rank as the Ordnance Department's director. Coupled with his special status, it would be more appropriate for him to be in charge. Guard Tengji of the Yi School, Bring 300 winged cavalry warriors with you to protect them along the way. If anything happens, you will be held responsible, the Empress said coldly. The armored general immediately complied. He naturally knew who the Empress wanted him to protect. If both of them were to encounter danger at the same time, Rinpoche was afraid that he would have to bring Deputy Prefect Rin back. Otherwise he would really have to raise his head to see the world. Go back and prepare. We will set off after noon. Rinpoche, stay behind. After the Empress finished speaking, Tao Jiyuan and Ting Ji left one after another. This is Feng Ho from the Ordnance Department. I have something to ask you. Greetings, Chief of the Department of Ordnance. Rinpoche turned around and cupped his hands. Deputy Prefect Rin, I would like to ask if you have any confidence in expanding the production of iron ore? Feng Ho turned around and looked at Rinpoche. That depends on the iron ore content and distribution. If it's just mining, there should be a way, Rinpoche said after thinking for a while. I heard from Her Majesty that Deputy Prefect Ren has a way to smelt iron ore and forge weapons? I wonder if you can tell me so that I can be prepared, Feng Ho asked again. The main problems in smelting iron ore are insufficient temperature and unstable temperature. The simple method is to use bellows. However, for a long period of time, we will need a steel-making furnace to continuously smelt steel. This process is very simple, the equipment requirements are low, and the stability is high. If the produced steel has low carbon content and fewer impurities, it can be forged directly. This saves a lot of manpower compared to forging by hand, Rinpoche explained. What is bellows? What is a steel-making furnace? What is steel? Feng Ho frowned and asked 3 questions in a row. With regards to this husband chosen by Her Majesty, he had the same opinion as everyone else in the imperial court. They all looked down on him. Otherwise, everyone wouldn't have objected to it back then. On one hand, he was too weak. On the other hand, other than bootlicking, he didn't seem to have any other abilities. This morning, Her Majesty summoned them over and said a few things. Her Majesty wanted to increase the production of iron ore. Not only Her Majesty, but the entire Ministry of Works had also racked their brains but still couldn't come up with a good solution. The 2 iron mountains were simply too difficult to mine. For so many years they had been mining slowly like this. Countless people racked their brains to no avail. Everyone felt that this was the only way. This time, Her Majesty let Rinpoche take charge and patrol the mines to find a solution. If that was the case, Rinpoche wouldn't say anything and let him do it. In any case, the Department of Military Arms would benefit from it, and it didn't matter if it didn't succeed. However, from what Her Majesty said, Rinpoche was going to intervene in the smelting and forging of weapons. In that case, Rinpoche couldn't just let him do it. If Rinpoche intervened, what could he do as the head of the Department of Military Arms? Furthermore, did Rinpoche really know how to mine, smelt, and forge weapons? If Rinpoche was really capable, everyone in the Department of Military Arms would listen to him. Otherwise, Feng Ho wouldn't allow Rinpoche to intervene in the Department of Military Arms. Therefore, he suggested to ask storyteller Rin. Rinpoche didn't mind. Instead, he explained in detail, you can try the bellows. It's a big box with a handle and a push board on one side and an air inlet. Then, a person will push and pull from one side to send air through. The air is full of oxygen, and with enough oxygen the fire will burn better. Furthermore, if someone keeps pushing and pulling, the fire will be more stable and the temperature will be higher, making it easier to smelt. Rinpoche roughly explained. As for the steel-making furnace, first of all, what is steel? If ordinary iron is used to forge weapons, it will be very brittle. Therefore, it needs to be forged to remove the impurities and reduce the carbon content. In the end, the result is actually steel. The steel-making furnace directly removes the impurities during the smelting process, reducing the carbon content and directly smelting the steel. This way you can at least save the time and effort of hammering and forging. Rinpoche explained. Feng Ho frowned as he didn't understand. The things that Rinpoche said made him feel that it was awesome even though he didn't understand it. He had been in the Department of Military Arms for more than 10 years. Even if he didn't say that he was proficient, he still had a rough idea of what was going on. However, he actually didn't understand what Rinpoche was talking about. The Empress looked at Feng Ho, who was frowning and thinking hard, and the corners of her mouth curled up. This was what she wanted to see. Naturally, she was clear about the thoughts of everyone in the imperial court. Her husband was chosen by herself, and it wasn't up to others to interrupt. But to be looked down upon like this, she was more or less unhappy. You're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.